This is CNN Breaking News.
And good evening. I'm Erin Burnett. Welcome to a special edition of Out Front. We're watching a special congressional election in Pennsylvania that could be a sign of serious trouble for President Trump and Republicans. And we're going to be getting the first results very shortly. First, more breaking news. We are following breaking news from the White House tonight. A number of late developments to tell you about. President Trump is signaling an even bigger shakeup, prepared to dismiss top aides that he has clashed with. Our Jim Sciutto has new reporting on some of the big names who may be on the chopping block tonight. It's pretty stunning how quickly this story of chaos is developing. We have more on that in a moment. We are learning that the president, meantime, is seeking to oust his embattled Veterans Affairs Secretary David Shulkin. Sources are telling us President Trump has grown irritated with him and is now seriously considering causing another vacancy to possibly replace him by taking the Energy Secretary Rick Perry and putting him over to take over Shulkin's spot. This comes just hours, of course, after the president fired his Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, without warning. Tillerson finding out over Twitter. Trump naming CIA Director Mike Pompeo to replace him and naming Pompeo's deputy, Gina Haspel, to lead the CIA. It is a pretty stunning day of developments. I want to start with the next possible dramatic shakeup inside the West Wing, which we are learning about this evening. Jim Sciutto is out front breaking these details. And, Jim, what are you learning?
Erin, my colleagues Pamela Brown, Jenna McLaughlin, Caitlin Collins, and I are told this evening that President Trump is considering a wider shakeup among senior staff as he seeks more like-minded advisors. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster appears poised to depart soon, following months of speculation about his standing. People familiar with the matter tell CNN. Outside advisors to the president have also felt out potential candidates to replace Chief of Staff John Kelly. A person who has been approached about this position tells CNN. Kelly's departure seen as less imminent than McMaster's, and Trump publicly praised his chief of staff on stage in California today, though he suggested that Kelly prefers life in the military. Officials said there is no solid sense of how long Kelly will last in the West Wing, where he's brushed up against members of Trump's own family, including Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Senior administration officials said that a further shakeup of senior staff could happen as soon as this week. Other officials suggesting a longer timeline, saying Trump could execute changes over the course of the next 2 months. Earlier today, Trump told reporters at the White House that he was nearing his staffing ideal.
I've gotten to know a lot of people very well over the last year, and I'm really at a point where we're getting very close to having the cabinet and other things that I want.
I should note that we are told that these removals will happen once replacements have been identified and chosen.
Obviously, that's a crucial point, right? You have to have people who have agreed to do it, who want to do it. And it's a lot of tumult they'll be walking into. Do you know, Jim, from your reporting on McMaster, who the president is considering to replace him?
This is what we're learning. The current candidates include John Bolton. He's the former U.S. ambassador to the UN under President George W. Bush. Oracle executive Safra Katz. The current director of the NSA, Admiral Mike Rogers. Also, Stephen Biegun. He's a vice president at Ford Motors and a former senior staff member in the George W. Bush administration. We should note that Bolton has met personally with the president several times, including during an Oval Office meeting just last week. He has also maintained a heavy presence on Fox News over the past week, including, we should note, praising President Trump's decision on North Korea. Erin?
All right, Jim, thank you very much. And out front now, our experts for the hour. And thanks to all of you. Sam Vinograd, obviously, you worked as a former security advisor for Obama, for President Obama. This is a major shakeup. When you look at it, obviously, timing TBD, and we know the president likes to spring that on people with surprise, as he did this morning with Rex Tillerson. But what does this mean? McMaster, possibly Kelly. What?
I think it could all actually be a red herring, Erin. You know, the president does not use his staff like other presidents have in the past. So we're hearing about these personnel changes. Let's take the State Department, for example. Rex Tillerson was a lame duck. He wasn't functioning as Secretary of State. So his removal may not really throw anything off course. I think the outstanding question is whether Mike Pompeo is going to be authorized to act like a Secretary of State, to suggest policy, to implement policy, or if he's just going to be another figurehead sitting in Foggy Bottom waiting for the president to make policy via tweet or from the podium or elsewhere.
Scott, well, you know, you've been in a White House, right? You worked for George W. Bush. The turnover here is something we've never before seen. many multiples, 43%. And George W. Bush, I'm trying to remember between that and Obama, 6, 9, one of them. They both were in the single digits. What do you do when you're facing a moment like this? 5 people gone in the past 2 weeks. Rex Tillerson gone today. McMaster could be gone imminently. And that could be just the beginning. I mean, of course, there are still those swirling questions about Kelly himself.
Yeah, I mean, regarding specifically the Secretary of State, this is actually the one cabinet officer. There can be no daylight between the president and the Secretary of State. When the Secretary of State speaks, the world must believe he speaks for the president. Clearly, Tillerson had lost that confidence, which made him ineffective. So from that perspective, if you want the State Department, which I do, to have a bigger voice in the Oval Office and around the world, this is energizing for people who believe in the mission of the State Department. Regarding the wider issue of staffing, this president needs to have a team that he can trust. And I think, to your point, there were staffers that he's not using or not listening to. Well, it's because he didn't have confidence in them or he didn't trust them. So at the end of the day, a president
So you think
needs,
this is good? All this turnover is a good thing?
I will tell you this. I think having staffers that the president trusts, that he will listen to, that he will deploy to implement his agenda is better than having a whole cabinet or a bunch of staffers that he just ignores, which is what he was doing to Tillerson.
But who's he going to trust, Paul?
Nobody.
Even some of the people he trusted have gone. Keith Schiller is gone. Hope Hicks is gone. I mean, the people he trusted aren't even sticking around.
Our president has had a longer relationship with a porno star than with his Secretary of State. Okay, that's what I'm concerned about. What this says about our president.
I always trust you, Paul, to deliver a line like that.
It's alleged affair. But I'm sure she got paid $130,000 for not having an affair with Donald Trump. But we are seeing a president in meltdown. And this has real effect. There's so many stories today. The thing that got me, Fred Pleitkin from our network, on reporting from Moscow, said that on Russian television, big show, big popular show, he said it was their version of 60 Minutes, the anchor went on the air, talked about Tillerson placing the blame for this nerve gas murder in England on Russia.
Which Tillerson did aggressively, loudly, and before the White House did.
And this anchor pointed that out and said, and immediately after he was fired by Trump, then she went on to say, and I quote, "We own Trump." When the Russians are boasting to the world that they own the American president, that's a crisis. It doesn't matter which staff he has around him. We have a president who seems to be in meltdown.
Well, I wouldn't believe Russian propaganda. I don't put as much credence in it as Paul does. This was a long time coming with Rex Tillerson. He's a good man. He's accomplished.
By the way, can I just say, the president, let's all just remember, when this all came out that he was going to fire Tillerson, maybe that was the time he should have done it. But he doesn't like it when people find out what he's doing, so he called it fake news on Twitter. And then he had to wait a month or two to actually do it because he has to be able to say it's fake news. Obviously, it was real news. And now he's finally done.
And clearly, he shouldn't have fired him on Twitter, okay? Yes, but Tillerson, he didn't have any constituency in the building, didn't have any constituency in the press corps, didn't have any constituency in the Capitol Hill, and didn't have a relationship with the president. That is a failure to launch as Secretary of State. So this is a good move. Mike Pompeo actually has a relationship with the president, shares his instincts, is smart in a quick study, and has proved at CIA he can run a large organization. So, yes, there's been a lot of chaos. A lot of it isn't good. But this is a good day for the administration to get rid of Tillerson and get in someone who has a better chance of success.
Is one of the few who really the president does seem to trust, who he didn't know before. He talked about Pompeo. Here's what he said.
I've worked with Mike Pompeo now for quite some time. Tremendous energy, tremendous intellect. We're always on the same wavelength.
Is Pompeo there for the long run, then? I mean, this is the only guy he's saying these kinds of positive things about who's been.
Let me roll those dice. I mean, who knows how long he's there. Here's the thing about Mike Pompeo. He has become very close to the president, does spend an incredible amount of time with the president. Prior, though, to him becoming named the CIA director, you know, he did not know Mike Pompeo. They actually had no relationship whatsoever. The good thing about Mike Pompeo is having him there. Can he be a conduit to Congress? Because right now, there doesn't seem to be a really strong conduit. I know Paul Ryan does a good job. I understand that. However, with the issues that he's going to be dealing with, specifically when you're dealing with Iraq, Iran, North Korea, any of these foreign policy hotspots right now, you got to have a good relationship with Congress. Hopefully Mike Pompeo can do that.
Joan.
And also, will he be able to convince the president? Pompeo actually does believe that the Russians meddled, that they meddled on the side to help Trump.
Yes.
Will he convince the president to begin to accept that and perhaps move on sanctions and perhaps take that threat seriously as the 2018 midterms approach? That would be a good thing. We're also not talking about the undersecretary who got fired for telling the truth about the fact that Tillerson heard that he was fired on Twitter. The White House put out a statement, oh, he was told last Friday he knew, and the undersecretary said, no, actually, that's not true. He learned on Twitter. Gone. You know, other administrations, you get fired for lying. This one, you get fired for telling the truth.
For a guy who loves to say you're fired, he's pretty terrified of actually doing it the way you should do it, which is to somebody's face.
Right.
All right, thank you all. You're all going to stay with me through the hours. We're getting ready for this huge special election closing at 8 o'clock, and top Republicans also going to be reacting to the chaos in the Trump administration. The governor of Ohio, former presidential candidate John Kasich, is out front next. Welcome back to a special edition of Out Front. We're following the breaking news on several fronts this hour. A day of major upheaval at the White House. Sources telling CNN that President Trump has grown irritated with his Veterans Affairs Secretary David Shulkin and is now planning to replace him, possibly with Energy Secretary Rick Perry. This comes just hours after Trump fired his Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who found out about it on Twitter. We also told you National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster and Chief of Staff John Kelly are also on thin ice tonight. Senior White House correspondent Jeff Zeleny joins me now with the latest. So, Jeff, what else are you hearing about Secretary Shulkin?
Well, Aaron, there's no question that the president campaigned on Veterans Affairs, and he's been disappointed by the output of his Veterans Affairs secretary, who's been mired in controversy for weeks. So the president is looking to replace him. We know he hinted earlier today that he is trying to remake his cabinet. So Rick Perry, of course, the former Texas governor and Air Force veteran himself, is one of the potential contenders here. The president wants to fix things and clean up house at the VA. We'll see if that happens. But, Aaron, it sure feels like spring cleaning around here in the West Wing and throughout the cabinet, no question. So keep an eye on that as the week rolls on.
And when you say cleaning up, I mean, today, the personal aide to the president, Johnny McEntee, fired, escorted from the building. What can you tell us about that?
Right. This is a longtime advisor and body man, if you will, to the president, who was with him all along through his run for the White House. He was removed from his office and we're told he's under investigation by the Department of Homeland Security for some type of financial irregularity or crime. Now, we're told it does not relate to the president directly, but he was escorted off the property. But at the same time this morning, the same time this was coming out, the Trump re-election campaign 2020 said he's coming on as a senior advisor. So he's still close to the president, even though apparently, Aaron, he's under investigation.
Possible criminal wrongdoing. Pretty stunning. Right. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Sure.
Out front now, two-term Republican governor of Ohio and former presidential candidate John Kasich. Governor, thanks so much for taking the time to be with me. The news is moving fast and furious this evening. We're reporting Trump is making plans to dump his Veterans Affairs Secretary Shulkin. We're also reporting National Security Advisor McMaster is next. And, of course, all of this comes on a day when the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson found out he was fired by a presidential tweet. Your reaction to this tumult?
Well, we're starting the NCAA tournament today. Imagine if you were the coach, or maybe that's not the best example, where you're an NBA coach, okay, and you're going to have a game tonight, and the owner's just fired 3 of the people on your team. Who are you going to start? How are you going to play? I mean, look, I don't want to make light of it because we're talking about the president, we're talking about the administration. But being the governor of the 7th largest state, if I had all this turmoil, I wouldn't get anything done. I mean, you have to have some stability to get things done. So I look at it and I'm just like, wow. I mean, where is this going? And I don't feel good about it at all.
I mean, Rex Tillerson, before we even had Rex Tillerson, is the 5th top Trump administration official in the past 2 weeks. 2 weeks to be fired or resigned. You can see past 2 weeks. 2 weeks to be fired or resigned. You can see the others there on the screen. You know, last week, as this was starting...
Look, it's unprecedented. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. Now, I know he wants to have his team, but what's the next team going to look like? And all I'm suggesting is I mean,
can you get a team? Remember he said there's 10 people for every job in the White House? Could that possibly be true at this point? Who would want to work for somebody who's doing this to the people that work for them?
There are people that probably want to go in, but the problem is then they go in. How do you get settled? How do you get going? Yeah. So when I started, first of all, I had a game plan, and I knew what I wanted. I knew the people I was going to take in, and you have to get ahead of these things, or how are you supposed to have anything done if everything is up in the air? You know, and again, back to a sports analogy. If the coach doesn't know who's going to be wearing a uniform, how are they supposed to have a game plan? How are they supposed to win the game? And that's what's so concerning about all this.
You know, the president last week tweeted the new fake news narrative is that there is chaos in the White House. Wrong. People will always come and go, and I want strong dialogue before making a final decision. I still have some people that I want to change. Parentheses, always seeking perfection. There is no chaos, only great energy. I mean, the reality of it is, if you're looking at turnover versus any other administration, it is chaotic. I guess it would depend on what your definition of chaos is. For me, it's chaotic. You know, what can I tell you? But he has a right to have the people that he wants. But I have to repeat, Aaron, it would be like if you were going to do a show, a live show, but you didn't know who any of your guests were going to be, and then you thought you had some, and then you didn't have them, and how are you supposed to do this? Well, you can't do a good show.
And you can't. No, and in this case, you're the president of the United States. So there's a lot of very serious issues. Look, if he wants to do this, he wants to get another team in there, fine. He has that right. But my concern is all the disruption makes it very difficult to be effective.
There's also a security clearance question. One of the people gone is Johnny McEntee, who was sort of the body man, you know, always with the president anytime he traveled, carrying his bags, you know, always there with him. Under investigation by Department of Homeland Security, we're finding out, you can see him on the screen now, for serious financial crimes, perhaps related to taxes and gambling, according to one government official. He was actually granted permanent security clearance. You know, keep in mind, you know, Rob Porter wasn't, right, because they were looking at domestic issues. He actually had been given that and now has been fired. Does that concern you that someone like that was able to pass all this and get into such an important position next to the president?
I don't know exactly how that works, but I think the proper authorities had to be the ones to vet him, and maybe they missed something. I can't tell you what happened on that, and I'm not familiar enough with that case. So I don't know what to say other than it's deeply troubling. And look, I want us to win. This is a time we've got people in England now, a father, a former spy, and his daughter clinging to life. Another person just died who was a Putin critic. You've got the whole issue of tariffs. You've got the negotiations with North Korea. You have to be solid. You have to move forward on all these issues. And if you do, you're going to have a better result. So I don't want to spend all my time, look, what I want is I want to see a strong team, and I want us to win some games and send a message to the world that, they can kind of believe us. They can trust us. They know that things are stable.
Right, which obviously, stability, not the message they're getting today or any other day recently. We are moments away from the polls closing in the special congressional election in Pennsylvania. You're from Pittsburgh originally. You're essentially now neighboring that close to neighboring that district in Ohio.
I couldn't have stayed there. I couldn't have been elected anything because I'm a Republican. It was a very heavy Democrat district. But now apparently it went Republican for many years, and now it's kind of flipping back. So it's another thing that shows pendulums and change.
I mean, Trump won this particular district by 20 points. And now the latest polls, and who knows, right? We're closing here in a few minutes. But the Democrat Conor Lamb could win or come incredibly close to doing so. Trump came and did that huge rally on Saturday night for the Republican Rick Saccone. Why is this race so close?
I think probably organized labor's come back, that the organized labor people are saying that that we're not happy with the candidate, and you start to see them kind of migrating back to the party, I think. Look, the big question for Republicans really are going to be suburban women, young people. Can they get greater votes in the minority community? As close as it is, I think you're going to see that organized labor played a huge role here.
Very interesting to see. All right, thank you so much, Governor Kasich.
It's always good to be with you. You do a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just ahead, the Republican heading up the Russian probe in the House Intelligence Committee backing away from his claim that Vladimir Putin didn't try to help Donald Trump win the 2016 election. We're going to talk about that and more with the top Democrat on that committee with a memo out tonight, Adam Schiff.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Breaking news, the Republican running the House Intel Committee's Russia probe appears to be backtracking tonight. Last night he said Putin did not try to help Trump win. Tonight he says you could look at it either way.
He was trying to hurt Hillary, either hurt her or, make it more difficult for her to be an effective president. Whether or not they're trying to hurt Hillary, help Trump, whatever it is, it's kind of the glass half full, glass half empty, kind of how you look at it.
Out front tonight, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Adam Schiff. Congressman, thanks so much for being with us tonight. When we listen to Congressman Conaway here, obviously it feels like a backtrack. What does it sound like to you?
Well, look, I don't think you can seriously argue that the Russians weren't trying to help Trump and hurt Clinton, as well as sow discord in the United States. The evidence is quite overwhelming on this. It was the early conclusion of the intelligence community, but that's only been furthered by all of the evidence we've seen in our investigation, and clearly what Bob Mueller has seen and what he has shown us in the indictment. But I think what the Republicans are struggling with is they're trying to placate the White House. They're trying to tell the White House the story the White House wants to be told. That's not their job. And when you read their draft report, as I did parts of it today, you see it looks like a series of talking points from the White House. And it's a fundamental betrayal of the commitment the majority made, and we along with them, that we would follow the facts wherever they lead. They haven't been willing to do it. They shut down the investigation before we were anywhere near done. And now they're making these claims that they have to quickly walk back because they just can't stand any public scrutiny.
Now so you're saying now you've read, parts of their report as they're working on it. Congressman Rooney had indicated they may take as many as 10 days to get it done, but you have already, Congressman Schiff, come out here with a 21-page report. I'm looking at it right now, a status report, as you call it, on the investigation. Obviously, the GOP has declared it over, but you're putting this as a status report with more witnesses you want to speak to. And also, you say new information never before revealed, such as?
Well, as we've gone through the investigation, you start out with a group of witnesses you want to talk to, and they lead you to other witnesses, and they lead you to other documents. And there's certainly things that have come to our attention over time that we weren't aware of at earlier stages of the investigation. Even within the last week, if you look at the public reports that George Nadar had testimony before the special counsel reportedly that contradicts what Eric Prince said under oath to our committee. We'd like to know who's telling the truth. The majority has decided they just don't care. We saw reports just this week that Roger Stone may not have been truthful to our committee, that there are witnesses contradicting him, including people like Sam Nunberg and others that have come to our attention. We'd like to know whether he was telling the truth or not. We'd like to know about his communications with Guccifer II and WikiLeaks, and have been asking for months to subpoena Twitter to get those records, but the majority has said they simply don't want to know.
I spoke to your colleague, Congressman Tom Rooney, last night, and obviously a Republican member of your committee, and he was very blunt. He says your committee overall was an indictment of Democrats or Republicans. It was about the committee. He said the investigation has lost credibility, and I wanted to play for you his words.
We've gone completely off the rails, and now we're just basically a political forum for people to leak information to drive the day's news. So we've, as you alluded to, we've lost all credibility, and we're going to issue probably two different reports, unfortunately. So I mean, in that regard, that's why I called for the investigation to end.
Congressman Schiff, has your committee lost all credibility and gone off the rails?
Well, the leadership of the investigation lost all credibility back in March of last year when our chairman went to the White House and announced that he had received from a secret source information implicating the Obama administration in an unmasking conspiracy, only to have it revealed he'd gotten that information from the White House. And he continued to run the investigation even when he had said he was recused. He would continue to either approve or deny subpoenas, approve or deny hearings. And then we had, of course, the whole chapter with the partisan Nunes memoranda, where I take issue with Mr. Rooney, and frankly, I think those statements are a cop-out. He was helping to run the investigation. He was setting the template for how they would conduct the investigation. And they decided very early on that they were not going to be serious about finding out what Russia did. They were not going to get to the truth. And that has been the fundamental problem. That put us in the position, in the minority, of either going along with what essentially would be a whitewash or standing up and speaking out. And we had really no choice but to do so.
Congressman Rooney alluded to something important as well in that you haven't responded to, and that is there have been a lot of leaks from your committee. As the ranking Democrat, Congressman Schiff, are you to blame for that?
Well, I haven't leaked anything, and I made it clear, and I think all the reporters who dealt with me, that I don't speak to confidential committee matters, and I certainly don't speak to classified information. I'm very careful about what I say, notwithstanding the attacks that the president makes and that are echoed on Fox News. And I've told the members of my committee months ago that if I catch anyone from our side leaking, I'm going to ask that they be removed from the committee. Now, I'm not going to say that none of the leaks have come from our side. This has been a problem that has plagued both sides. But the difference that we have seen is on the majority side, in several instances, the leaks have not only taken place from the majority, but they've taken place under instructions from the leadership of the majority. And that's a very different ballgame. And that, I think, was a willful effort to impede the credibility of the investigation.
All right, Congressman Schiff, thank you very much for your time tonight, sir.
Thank you.
All right, and we are moments away here within the half-hour, polls closing in this crucial race in Pennsylvania. Why are Democrats confident they have a chance to flip a seat in what was solid red Trump country? That's next. And we are just moments away from the first results in tonight's Pennsylvania special congressional election. This is a race that could give us some major clues on how the midterm elections are going to go later this year. President Trump won this district that we're looking at tonight by nearly 20 points. So you'd think, hey, shoo-in, right? No. Republicans worry the seat might be about to fall into Democratic hands. And it may seem surprising when you hear that a Democrat is competitive in such a deeply red district. But this is not an isolated phenomenon. Let's get to John King with more.
An intensity advantage or an enthusiasm gap is what Democrats are counting on tonight in Pennsylvania. They have reason to believe their voters are coming out to play. If they do, they think they can win a district that President Trump carried just 16 months ago by 20 points. Why are the Democrats confident they have this intensity advantage? Well, they look at 2017, when the party, even in defeat, showed that its voters were ready to come out and play. Let's start in Kansas. Now, to be clear, look at the red bars. Democrats lost both times, 2016 and 2017 in the state of Kansas, but look at the performance improvement. In 2017, Democratic performance up more than 20 points. Democrats want to play. Even in defeat, that makes the party happy. Same thing in Montana. Democrats lost this House special election in 2017, but look at 2016, look at 2017. Democratic performance up by 15 points. Now, Georgia was the exception. House special election here. Democrats not only lost the seat, they saw their performance from 2016 drop a little bit. So everybody's studying this race. What did the Democrats? Case in point, South Carolina. Another House special election. Another House special election. Democrats lost the seat, but another House special election. Democrats lost the seat, but they see reason to be happy in this. Their performance in 2017 up more than 15 points in that district from the 2016 presidential election. Democrats have intensity. They're coming out. Virginia was a big sweep in 2017 for the Democrats. Their performance only up a little more than 3 points, but in a state trending blue, they win the governor's race. They pick up state legislative seats. Democrats coming out to play, especially in key places. Then you move on here to the state of New Jersey. It's a blue state, so the Democrat numbers are even. That's fine for the Democrats. If their voters come to play at the presidential level in 2017 and now in 2018, Democrats will do just fine. Some House seats in play in New Jersey on the Republican side. This, the crown jewel of 2017 from a Democratic perspective. Alabama, ruby red Alabama, now has a Democratic senator. How did that happen? Look at the performance jump. Nearly 30 points in 2017, up from 2016 because Democrats want to play, want to win, and they're coming out with great intensity. This is what the Democrats do. They look back at 2017. They look at that intensity advantage, that enthusiasm gap. They think if they can carry this over into the 2018 midterms, then they can take back the House, possibly the Senate. The first test of this in Pennsylvania tonight. And that first test about 20 minutes away, Aaron, as we start to count the votes. Will there be Democratic intensity? Will Conor Lamb get the surge as many Democrats did in 2017? This is where we'll look. 4 counties in the district, but Allegheny County, the lower slice of it here, is part of the 18th congressional district. This is where most of the Democrats live. It's more than 40% of the vote in the district. If Conor Lamb is winning the southern part of Allegheny County and winning it big, he's in play tonight, and Democrats, Aaron, will have a chance to steal a seat in Trump country.
And obviously that would be a major coup for them. Thank you very much, John King. And a panel back with me, also joining me, columnist Catherine Rampell for the Washington Post. So let me start with you, Catherine, since you've just joining us. According to the filings, latest FEC filings we have, GOP supporters spent nearly $11 million, $10.7 million, either directly trying to help the Republican here or trying to directly oppose the Democrat. Democratic groups, only $2 million. Trump won this district by 20 points. How in the world is it even close?
because Trump is floundering. And by the way, given the numbers that you just mentioned, this is one of the most expensive House races on record. When you adjust for the expected number of days in office that this winner will be serving, right? Because this is a district that is not going to exist in a few months because of redistricting in Pennsylvania. So when you adjust for that, there's a lot of money being poured into this race for a person that will have to turn around and run in a different district fairly soon. Look, Trump has been an albatross around the neck of a lot of Republicans so far. So you can understand why the voters in this district may not be so thrilled about a candidate who's basically given him a bear hug.
No, what's interesting, Mark, is that, you heard Governor Kasich, who obviously grew up near this area and his state now borders it, saying he thinks unions are coming back and they're coming back for Democrats. Right. But again, Trump won this by 20 points, and he went to that big rally for the Republican, Rick Saccone, and he went there this weekend. We all heard it. Here's what he said.
Go out on Tuesday and just vote like crazy. You got to get out there. The world is watching. I hate to put this pressure on you, Rick. They're all watching because I won this district like by 22 points. It's a lot. That's why I'm here. Look at all those red hats, Rick. Look at all those hats. It's a lot of hats.
The Trump way, Mark, of saying, right, I did fine. Yeah. Don't blame it on me if you can't pull it off, guy.
I'll tell you what, if you came from another world and you were beamed down and you watched that speech, you would think that Donald Trump himself was running in that district. He went up there to try to boost the candidate, right, Rick Saccone, to try to boost him up. He made it all about himself, except for a very little sliver, as we saw.
And basically insulted him. I mean, basically, it's throwing him under the bus. You're not a good candidate. I don't know what your problem is, but it reminded me of Luther Strange when he campaigned for Luther Strange, and he basically lost.
And we do know that Republicans, too, are behind the scenes. And I've had these conversations with them as well, folks who were involved in the race. They say that he's a terrible candidate. They've already written him off, and we know that Trump believes that as well.
And has said that. But
he is a terrible candidate. Conor Lamb, maybe there's such a big Democratic surge it won't matter. But I suspect if Democrats take the House, it'll be like 06 when a big element of it is running impressive candidates like Conor Lamb who are fit for their district, who distance themselves from Nancy Pelosi and distance themselves from the liberal cultural agenda on issues like guns and abortion.
Which you can see, except for Trump wants to be out there.
Opposed.
He's pro-choice.
He loves it. You're not going to keep him off the campaign trail, even if somebody says you're an albatross.
Sure. Well, he wants to be out there, and there will be ways to deploy the president in places that could be helpful in some states. I went through this in the 06 cycle with President George W. Bush. He was able to campaign in some places, but not in others. Regarding this district, Saccone, everybody says he's a bad candidate. We shouldn't say he's a bad person. Great person, served his country, but that doesn't make you the right fit for an individual race. He was not the right fit. There were 3 Republicans considered by the local committee, and they picked the worst one of the 3 because of local infighting. And by the way, it is not Donald Trump's fault that the Republican congressman who resigned asked his mistress to get an abortion, tainting this entire process. That's not the president's fault.
No.
And really cast a pall over Republican
interesting that the people who should be arguing for the Republican side here are far from endorsing, and we're obviously just a few minutes away from the polls closing. Paul, you're going to be first up next, just ahead, moments away from the first results in the special election. So stay with us. And welcome back to a special edition of Out Front. We are counting the minutes down here. Special election, polls closing in a few moments that could shake up Congress in Pennsylvania, test the president, and whether his party can win the midterms. Talking about 20 points for Trump, favoring Trump in the presidential election. The forecasting site in the presidential election. The forecasting site 538 though points out that in terms of election. The forecasting site 538 though points out that in terms of registered Democrats, 46%, registered Republicans, 41%. Does that make you look at this differently? Sure, they went for Trump, but it should go Democratic.
Well, it should if the Democrats have been doing their job for the last 10 or 15 years. It went for John McCain solidly. It went for Mitt Romney solidly. This is a snapshot, a moving picture of the erosion of support the Democrats have suffered among the white working class, and then Trump blew it out. Trump won in a landslide there. So this is, for Democrats, I think, a very good sign that Conor Lamb is bringing that back. What if we were in a dead heat race in Brooklyn? What would it say to the Democrats if a Republican had a real shot at winning in Brooklyn?
So you think that's the proper analogy?
So we need a bigger boat, Mr. President.
Did you hear, Scott, Governor Kasich said he thinks what this is about is labor unions. They're coming back, and they're coming back to Democrats, which, of course, we had seen a big shift in that, at least a shift enough to make a big difference for President Trump. Do you think he could be right?
I don't know. Again, I think local circumstances here, I don't want to overread the national implications. I mean, clearly there's been some erosion in the suburbs and the exurbs for Republicans since the president took over. But the White House will tell you their internal polling shows him in as good a shape today in this district as he was a month after the election. I really think here we got to look at the economy. You want to talk about labor unions? They just gift wrap the tariffs and 31,000 new manufacturing jobs in the report on Friday.
They haven't made any difference. First of all, both candidates have endorsed the tariffs. Right. Second of all, if you look at the polling, only 4% of the people in that district say that tariffs have influenced their vote at all.
Really what matters is Conor Lamb. He's run a great campaign. And when you say, yes, and when you say the unions are coming back to him, it's not just a magical force of nature kind of thing. It's something that he's gone out and done. He has courted them. He's done some things that Hillary Clinton didn't do. He's run a really smart campaign around economics.
Who wins, Rich?
I don't know. Don't ask me that. Like 20 minutes before the polls close. People might remember my prediction. I'll just make a general analytical point and ignore that question. You know, Obama forged a unique coalition, and then in midterms he just could not turn out his base for other Democrats. We may see the similar phenomenon with Trump, where he had a unique coalition appeal to the kind of voters in this district, but can he actually get them to turn out for someone else? Probably not.
All right, and that's the big question, of course, whether those internal polls showing him up so much are true or not. That we won't find out yet as we await those first results from this crucial special election in Pennsylvania just moments away.
We're just minutes away from the first results in tonight's special congressional election. I'm Wolf Blitzer. We want to welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world. The polls are about to close in the 18th congressional district in western Pennsylvania, concentrated in the suburbs just south of Pittsburgh. Tonight, President Trump could see a pocket of his blue-collar base turn on him and his party. It's been a Republican stronghold that went overwhelmingly for President Trump back in 2016. But Democrat Conor Lamb is running a very competitive race against Republican Rick Saccone, who's fighting to keep the seat in GOP hands. With help from President Trump, who campaigned with him this past weekend. We'll soon get a sense of whether the president's involvement in this race paid off or backfired. Jake, over to you.
Wolf, this is another important testing ground ahead of the battle for control of Congress. In this year's midterm elections, Republicans are watching tonight's contest closely. Let's get to our senior congressional correspondent, Manu Raju, for reaction from Capitol Hill. Manu, are you sensing some nerves from Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill tonight?
Absolutely, Jake. Several Republican officials tell me tonight that they are expecting that Republican Rick Saccone will lose tonight to the Democrat Conor Lamb. And already, Jake, before the polls have even closed, the blame game is intensifying, pointing the fingers at two areas. One, the Saccone campaign, and two, on President Trump himself, which some Republicans believe that Saturday night rally that he had in this western Pennsylvania district may have helped Democrats more than it did help the Republicans. Now, first on the Saccone campaign, some key Republicans say this was a lackluster campaign that did not do enough to define this opponent early. And this is one key Republican is Corey Bliss, who's the head of a super PAC that is tied to Speaker Paul Ryan. Now, this is what Corey Bliss just said to me. He said, this is a very challenging environment for Republicans. We need good candidates who run good campaigns. This may not be nice to say. The fact is the Saccone campaign was a joke. If we had a candidate who could walk and chew gum at the same time, we would have won that race. Now, other Republicans have also agreed with that assessment, but Jake, also the finger being pointed at President Trump himself, with some Republicans believing it's turning up Democratic votes, maybe up to 3-1 tonight, but we'll see what happens at the end of the night, Jake.
Thanks, Manu, and you can tell just how worried some Republicans are in Washington, D.C. because of all the money that's been pouring into the race, more than $10 million to help the Republican Rick Saccone in a district that might not even exist after November because of redistricting. So the question tonight, the reason we're watching this race and covering it tonight is because the big question is whether Democrats can hang on to the momentum, Dana, the momentum that they had since President Trump was elected with the elections in New Jersey and Virginia and then, of course, in Alabama.
Yeah, that's right. And Democrats really believe that if they are successful,
the way that they think they will be tonight, that they will prove across the board to the energized resistance, as they like to call themselves, that it's worth it, that they can harness that, and especially when they have candidates who they believe are the right fit for the district and who are just authentic personalities, as they believe Conor Lamb, the Democrat, is. Just bouncing off of what Manu said, I'm hearing the same thing. Republicans sometimes say, oh, we're going to lose. It's an expectations game. This time, they really seem to mean it. And it is remarkable, given the fact that Donald Trump won by 20 points, that this district has been in GOP hands for 16 years. Republicans are hoping this is a wake-up call for their candidates to take this Democratic momentum seriously.
And not just Trump winning it by 20 points. Mitt Romney won this district by 17 points. Wolf?
Lots at stake tonight. Let's go over to John King over at the Magic Wall. Set the scene for us in this 18th congressional district.
As you can see, it's southwest Pennsylvania. The district stretches over 4 counties: Greene, Washington, a small slice of Allegheny County at the south, and Westmoreland County. Again, everyone's been talking about the history. President Trump won it over Hillary Clinton by 20 points, including, this is key tonight, Hillary Clinton carried Allegheny County, the largest county in this area. But in this slice, the precincts that are in the 18th district, Donald Trump carried. So this is the big test tonight for Conor Lamb. This is the most Democratic area of the district. Can the Democratic candidate turn out votes here in big numbers? Remember, in 2017, we saw all this Democratic intensity, the enthusiasm gap. This is what we'll look for. The suburbs south of Pittsburgh, the part of Allegheny County, still in this district. And the challenge for Rick Saccone: did the president convince Republicans in these more rural counties to turn out tonight? Wolf, we'll start counting votes any second.
We're just moments away from polls closing, and this key special congressional election tonight will be a very important test for the President of the United States. All right, we have our first key race alert of the night. Take a look at this. Too early to call. The polls have just closed clearly in Pennsylvania. Too early to call between Conor Lamb, the Democrat, Rick Saccone, the Republican. But the votes will be coming in very, very quickly. We'll get the results. In the meantime, let's go over to Anderson.
Well, thanks very much. This is a special edition of AC 360. I want to get more reaction now from our panels. Michael Smerconish, you know this state very well. What are you expecting tonight? What are the stakes?
I'm looking for margin as much as I am the victor. I don't know that it matters all that much if it ends up being a squeaker, which side prevails, because I think the storyline will be set, and that storyline will be one of disappointment and setback for the GOP. So whether it's Saccone by 2 or Conor Lamb by 2 matters less to me than it's a 4-point margin or whatever it might end up.
So even if the Democrat loses, despite all these expectations, if it's close, the Democrats are going to claim this.
Yeah, it'll be very difficult, I think, for there to be a success story, even in a Saccone victory that's by, I'll put it at less than 5, given the propensity of this district.
But I would just add that psychologically, there's a different impact, especially for Republican members. So tomorrow morning, if Republicans were to gather for their conference meeting, if they have lost this seat, there will be a different feeling inside that room about the real concern and panic about what November may bring versus, and I agree with you, the Democrats would have reason to claim some victory here if they get close. But the difference psychologically for Republicans tomorrow morning, if they actually can hang on to this, is very different from if they actually lose this.
Republicans have poured a lot of money into this, right?
Oh, yeah. They've poured a lot of money through PACs. The RNC has put about $1 million into it, just under $1 million. And I think if they lose the seat, alarm bells are going to start going off, and you're going to see more Republicans deciding to call it quits and retire and say, you know what, this environment is kind of tough for me if I'm in a suburban district. And maybe I don't want to go through this, and so I think we're going to have to take a look at that. I mean, yes, the margin is really important, but also the fact of a loss will be important. And we should also say, by the way, that this is a seat that's going to change in like what?
November.
A minute.
Yeah. Right.
In a minute. So so everybody's pouring all this money into this. Because they understand the symbolism. The Republicans would not have poured a lot of money into this, nor would the Democrats if they didn't understand its meaning.
It's also going to mean if Republicans lose it, they're going to have to figure out a new message because the message they ran in this campaign was, at first at least, heavily around the tax cut, right? And in some ways, it might have backfired because they started to pull some of those ads that were up in that district. I think for a lot of the folks I talked to on the ground, senior citizens were a little bit nervous about this tax cut because maybe it would mean something in terms of cuts to the social safety net. A lot of older folks households in this district. It's one of the oldest districts in the country. So they're going to have to figure out what this means. Also, it'll be interesting to see what union members do in this district. There are about 80,000 union households in this district. And if they vote differently than the way they voted in the past, then it'll be a good night for Conor.
Joe Trippi, I mean, if Conor Lamb wins, what is the message to Democrats? Because he's a different kind of Democrat, certainly than a Bernie Sanders, who's obviously independent, or Elizabeth Warren. I mean, he's pretty centrist. He's a veteran, pro. He shoots guns. He does a lot of things.
He's built for the district, which I think is the big lesson Democrats hope that other Democrats across the country get, that when we have a Democrat with a D next to their name who fits the district, that we can win. And the significant thing I think about tonight is in every one of the races that we've had this year, there have been significant gains for Democrats, for Doug Jones in the race in Alabama, for instance, where we saw Republican women, particularly suburban Republican women, younger Republicans, and college-educated Republicans defect and start to cross over and vote for Democrats. The one thing we have not seen is working-class Democrats and Republicans who voted for Trump, that group, particularly the Republicans, move. And the only way Conor Lamb is close, if he's close tonight, that had to happen. There are not enough younger Republicans, college-educated Republicans, and suburban Republicans in this district. That gets him only so far. He's got to significantly move Republicans who voted for Trump. They either stay home or they come for Conor Lamb, or he can't win.
If only on this panel we had someone who used to represent that district. Oh, we do, Senator Santorum. What are you looking for tonight?
Well, I think the suburban Allegheny County area is going to be key. If Rick Saccone can hold down Conor's vote there, I think Rick's going to do well in the out counties. The question is how much Conor's going to be able to roll it up in the suburban Allegheny County districts. But like, Joe's right. I mean, Conor Lamb was the absolutely right candidate, and he didn't get through a primary. This is really important to understand. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He didn't have to face the Democratic electorate and get through. Had he had to face the Democratic, he never would have won the primary. Yeah, some progressive would have won the primary, and I guarantee you, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight because this race wouldn't be close. Yeah. If you run a traditional Democrat in that district, a Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama Democrat, it's not close. But they ran a guy who says, I'm a Catholic and I'm very pro-life, although I'm not going to vote pro-life, but I am personally pro-life. And I'm with Trump on trade, and I'm with him on guns, and I'm Trump light. And remember, there's 25,000 more registered Democrats in that district. You can say, well, they vote Republican all the time. They do for president, right, and they do for Congress, but they don't for county commissioner. They don't for their local offices. They still see themselves as Democrats, that the Democratic Party nationally has left them. Mm-hmm. Conor Lamb says, no, we haven't. Here I am. You can vote for me. It's safe. And so that's why Conor Lamb's in this race. And I don't think that's a message that Democrats can win on across the country, because they can't win primaries. Guys like Conor Lamb can't win primaries. And that's the problem the Democratic Party has in the fall.
Kirsten, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what both of them said. I mean, there is an issue with the Democratic Party. You're right. Even him saying that he is personally pro-life would have been, would have just killed him straight dead in his tracks. So there is this sort of debate going on in the Democratic Party of people who are saying, I think like Joe saying that, no, we have to have people that fit the district, and other people saying, no, we're not going to compromise on our core principles and we're going to stick to it. And, I'm more in the camp of that you have to have somebody who fits the district. And I think Democrats are really watching this because, while it's true there are more registered Democrats, it's still fundamentally a red district. And there are 23 seats that are in moderate districts where, Hillary Clinton had won, but Republicans hold. And I think Democrats are looking at those and saying, if we can win here, what could we do in a moderate district?
Jason, is this a referendum on President Trump, as the Democrats would like it to be?
I don't think, not in the way the Democrats would like it to be. I mean, we're going to hear the Chicken Little, the sky is falling, and then 48 hours from now, nobody is going to remember who either of these two candidates are. We're going to go back to following everything that goes on with the White House. And
who's being fired, and
they'll be, well,
good news.
Hey, we're here for a couple hours, so who knows will even pop up. I think Nia had exactly right as far as different numbers that you can look at with regard to union voting households. Keep in mind that nationally, and I always say this is the biggest stat from 2016, President Trump only lost union voting households 51 to 42. That's usually it's 10 or 20 points higher. And so part of the question here is, can other Republicans not named Donald Trump do as well with union voting households? I think we're going to see that. Again, the Democrat in this race ran a really good race, and a lot of times people forget, when you have these special elections, and keep in mind I led the comeback campaign of Mark Sanford in 2013, so I've seen these special elections. What we think, what all the smart people in Washington think is going on in the district is much different than on the ground. People get to know these candidates at such an intimate, direct level that we might think that we have an entire narrative, and on the ground they're like, you know what? I like that Lamb guy. He looks kind of conservative, and the other guy has a goofy mustache. It could come down to something as basic as that, but we see it differently than the people actually there.
You know, what's interesting about all this, too, is that the tariff issue, you know, here the president says, I'm going to do steel tariffs, I'm going to do aluminum tariffs. The point is the Democrat and the Republican both support this. And it's another way in which the Democrat is running like a Republican. And also, he is anti-Nancy Pelosi. He has gone out there
and he won't vote for her.
He said he's not going to vote for her. So, you know, here you have a Democrat on every sort of orthodoxy is saying no. You know, I'm not with you on that. And you know, if the Democrats have fortitude and want to win and nominate these kind of candidates, they can do it in these districts. But I'm with you. I'm a little skeptical.
When you hear Republicans talking to Manu saying, "Oh, he didn't run a good campaign. He couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time." Is that true, or is that just kind of setting the stage for a loss and an explanation?
Another interesting dynamic of how Rick Saccone became the candidate. I mean, Rick, there were three candidates in the caucus. Remember, this was a special election. There wasn't a primary, and the two leading candidates, two state senators, sort of went after each other, bashed each other, and Rick came from third to win the primary. And he was considered sort of the hardcore conservative candidate, very socially conservative. That was his mantra, and had that base and then grew it to be able to win it. And you can make the argument that someone like, yeah, he probably wasn't our strongest candidate. I don't accept the fact that he was this guy's a decorated veteran. He'd written 3 books on North Korea. This is a smart guy, a veteran, someone who
he's a state rep.
He's a state rep. I mean, he's a good communicator. Did he raise any money? No, he didn't raise any money. And that, of course, means more than anything in this town, and that's probably why they call him a bad candidate.
Got to take a quick break. Just ahead, we're standing by for votes from Pennsylvania. Can Democrats pull off an upset in Trump country? Plus, more on the chaos today in Washington as the president fires his Secretary of State. Might be looking to make big changes in the West Wing as well.
Once again, we have another key race alert. Clearly, still too early to call. The votes are about to start coming in this Pennsylvania special election. Conor Lamb, the Democrat, versus Rick Saccone, the Republican. We're going to bring you the results as soon as they come in. In the meantime, let's go back to Jake. There's been some dramatic cabinet reshuffling with apparently, Jake, more on the way.
That's right. It's been a chaotic day here in Washington, even more so than normal. The president fired his Secretary of State with a morning tweet, and that's how the Secretary of State found out he'd been fired, in fact. And he is looking to oust more of his top aides as he shakes up his staff and his administration. Our chief national security correspondent, Jim Sciutto, has more details. And Jim, what are you learning?
And these changes could be coming very soon. Myself and my colleagues Pamela Brown, Jenna McLaughlin, Caitlin Collins, we are told tonight that President Trump is considering a wider shakeup among senior staff as he seeks more like-minded advisors. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster appears poised to depart soon following months of speculation about his standing. People familiar with the matter tell us outside advisors of the president have also felt out potential candidates to replace Chief of Staff John Kelly, this coming from a person who has been approached about this position. Kelly's departure is seen as less imminent than McMaster's, and Trump publicly praised his Chief of Staff on the stage in California on Tuesday, though he also suggested that Kelly might prefer life in the military. Officials said there is no solid sense of how long Kelly will last in the West Wing, where he has, though, brushed up against members of Trump's own family, including Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. A senior administration official said that a further shakeup of senior staff could happen as soon as this week, while other officials suggest a longer timeline, saying Trump could execute changes over the course of the next 2 months. Of course, I should note that the president today also said that he might be nearing a cabinet more to his liking.
And he's also been sounding out, CNN has reported, the idea of replacing his VA secretary, his Veterans Affairs Secretary, David Shulkin, with his Energy Secretary, former Governor Rick Perry. So who knows?
That's right. A lot of movement.
Lots going on. Let's get more reaction from the former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper. General Clapper, thanks for being here. One of the reasons President Trump said that he fired Rex Tillerson was because he's more on the same wavelength as Mike Pompeo, the CIA director who he has tapped to be the next Secretary of State. Do you think Pompeo is on the same wavelength as the president when it comes to specifically the idea of meeting with Kim Jong-un?
I really don't know about that, but I think in general terms, yeah, I think it's pretty clear that Mike Pompeo is on the same page philosophically with President Trump. And so, in some sense, I think the State Department is probably actually a better fit for him because he is, policy activist, and that's a better place to be than as director of CIA.
And General Clapper, you continue to be very outspoken about your concern about the threat that continues from Russia vis-a-vis meddling in American elections. You know now the CIA director, former Congressman Pompeo, from his days as a congressman on the Intel Committee. Based on what you know about him then and what you've seen now, do you believe that he shares your concerns about Russia?
I think he probably does because he has been pretty consistent in his statements about the assessment and certainly in his congressional appearances, and has pretty much reaffirmed that the Russians meddled. Now, you can, one thing I sort of take issue with him is on saying, well, it had no impact on the election. Well, there's no way to gauge that. I think actually it kind of stretches logic to suggest that it didn't have some impact on some voter decisions when you consider the election was settled by less than 80,000 votes in 3 states, which the Russians targeted. So, yes, we don't have any empirical proof of how voter decisions were made, and we certainly didn't examine that in our assessment that we did in January 17. So that's one place I would disagree with him. But I think he has publicly acknowledged the threat posed by Russia, which is what really concerns me, because right now Russia is actually waging war in the information realm against the United States.
So I'd like to ask you about the woman whom President Trump has tapped to be the first woman CIA director. She's the current deputy CIA director, Gina Haspel. She will presumably take over the intelligence briefings for the president, which Pompeo had been doing, the presidential daily brief, which is reportedly how President Trump and Mike Pompeo, the current CIA director, how they've bonded so well. Gina Haspel is controversial because of a lot of things in her past dealing with the CIA, including her role in torture at a black site in Thailand. But more specifically, I want to ask you, since you have worked with her and you do approve of her, how you think she is at communicating and whether or not she might be able to form that same relationship with the president.
Well, I think that's obviously very personal. Certainly the president has seen enough of her when she's filled in for Director Pompeo, sufficient that he has confidence in her. Now, the relationship and the manner of communicating is going to be very different because Gina is a very different person than Mike Pompeo. But certainly, and it's a great thing. It should be the 3rd woman in the history of the intelligence community to head up one of the major agencies, and of course the first at CIA. But that, apart from her being a woman, is her competence. She's, I think the world of her. I've worked with her, and I think she's very good. And I think the agency rank and file look very positively on her as director, and I think as well she'll work very well with D&I Coates and his deputy, Sue Gordon.
All right, Anderson, back to you.
All right, Jake, thanks very much. Back with the panel. I mean, it is fascinating for a president who became known for saying you're fired to not actually fire anybody face-to-face, to fire his own Secretary of State on Twitter, and for the Secretary of State, a guy who's been traveling all around the world for this president, to discover it that way. I mean...
Not a body man. I mean, a Secretary of State, and I thought that the lack of decorum in the way in which it was carried out was stunning, even for this administration. What I'm reminded of is that we all tend to fixate on so much of this change on a day-to-day basis with the administration, and I continually ask about the political dynamics and whether it resonates with his base, and if so, in a negative way. and I'm not convinced that it does.
You know, it didn't actually surprise me that much. Look at the way he fired Comey. I mean, he really hated Comey. We understand that.
By dispatching Schiller.
And he did, right. And he didn't really like Rex Tillerson much. And I think it's a reflection of the fact that the president's been thinking about this for a long time. It was rude and a bad way to do it.
Been thinking about it, even though he was decrying this as fake news when this has been reported.
Yeah, it's been brewing. I mean, I was talking to a source today who said that the president believes that, you know, not only does he disagree with Tillerson on a bunch of stuff, but the guy doesn't treat him well. He's arrogant to him. He's rude. The president doesn't like it. I mean, he may not get along with General McMaster, I was told, but McMaster at least treats him with a certain amount of deference. He felt that was totally gone in his relationship with Rex, and as a result, he didn't show him an awful lot when he decided to fire him. But look,
and Rex Tillerson didn't show him an awful lot
Rex
back. He
Tillerson
didn't thank the president in his remarks today. I mean, it was so clear that there was no relationship in existence at all, and I do think that is probably one of the positions where that is just so untenable. You can't have on the world stage people know that the person representing the president of the United States and the country to the world has zero relationship with the president.
Right. Yeah, and this was somebody that Donald Trump didn't know. It was somebody who came highly recommended from Condi Rice. He was kind of the establishment pick and somebody who people thought could be the adult in the room. And now Trump is saying he wants to cast other members of this second season of the Trump administration. And that's what he's doing with Pompeo in this new role. If he gets confirmed, it's likely that he will, but we'll see. I mean, he is somebody who promised disruption. I don't know that he promised disruption of the people he put in place, but that's certainly what we're seeing.
But he was also, I mean, he wasn't very well liked at the State Department either. So, I mean, we need to remember that, and I think that they're somewhat relieved to see him go. And he also, you know, I'm sorry, if somebody who worked for me called me a moron and then went out and someone asked him about it and didn't recant it, I would probably have fired them long before Donald Trump did. And he also reportedly gave him an opportunity to resign, and he didn't, you know, so I wouldn't do it on a tweet, but this is one of those cases where I feel like I kind of see where Donald Trump is coming from here. You should be respectful to your boss, especially the President of the United States, whatever other people may think of him.
From a total political thing, though, why today? Election day in Pennsylvania.
Practice.
And you're visiting the wall, which is your signature subject.
But the one thing, I mean this, it seems like there's a big disconnect, obviously, but the one thing that's moving those Republican women, those college-educated Republicans, is that they don't like the sense of chaos. That's what it's not the policies, it's the chaos. They don't like it. They feel like they're on the edge of their seat. They're going to the polls today to vote. Conor Lamb needs them. And what's the President of the United States do after showing up on Saturday saying to vote for...
We got to take a break. We will continue to talk about this because there's a lot more going on at the White House. That's not the only person leaving today. One was actually escorted off very quickly, didn't even have time to get his coat, according to reports. We're expecting the first votes from tonight's special congressional election in Pennsylvania. We'll have that ahead as well.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Welcome back. We're waiting for the first results to come in from the special election in Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district. The Democrat Conor Lamb, the Republican Rick Saccone. Those results, the first votes should be coming in fairly soon. We'll share those results with you as soon as they come in. In the meantime, let's go back to Jake.
Thanks, Wolf. Joining us right now is the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Tom Perez. Tom, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Jake.
So, huge race going on right now in the Pennsylvania 18th. I want you to take a look at some figures we have when it comes to spending in this congressional race. First, you see Conor Lamb has outraised the Republican Rick Saccone significantly, $3.1 million raised by the Democrat Conor Lamb, compared to not even $1 million from Rick Saccone. But if you look at the outside groups, it is significantly more on the Republican side, $10.5 million raised by Republican groups compared to not even $1 million raised by Democratic groups. I guess the question is, if Conor Lamb wins tonight, are Democrats going to do more to help Democrats running? Is the DNC going to do more to help Democrats running in traditionally Republican districts like this one?
Well, we invested in this district, certainly not as much as the Republicans, and they had to invest $10 million because they had a really poor candidate. They had Trump in there twice. They had to drag him across the finish line. We've been investing everywhere. We've been helping candidates up and down the ticket, Pennsylvania and elsewhere, and so has the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And so I think it's remarkable that a district where we didn't field a candidate in the last 2 cycles, we have a spectacular candidate, and he is poised to perhaps get across the finish line.
So I want to, obviously a lot of the money has been spent on ads. I want to give our viewers just a little taste of the ads that have been running. Here is one that is anti-Conor Lamb. Take a look.
His name is Conor Lamb, but in Washington, he'd be one of Nancy Pelosi's sheep. Lamb would join the liberal flock and follow Pelosi's lead, voting the straight Liberal Party line for Pelosi's extreme agenda.
One that is pro-Conor Lamb. Take a look.
Opponent wants you to believe the biggest issue in this campaign is Nancy Pelosi. It's all a big lie. I've already said on the front page of the newspaper that I don't support Nancy Pelosi.
So, Chairman Perez, the question for you is, given the fact that it's clear Republicans are going to run against Nancy Pelosi again, and this at least seems to be a winning strategy if we assume that Conor Lamb will win tonight, to distance himself from Nancy Pelosi, will you as party chair encourage more Democrats in red districts or swing districts to step away from Nancy Pelosi?
Listen, Democrats are going to do what they believe is best to win their races. And the reason why Conor Lamb is doing so well is he's talking about the issues. He's talking about pension security. That's why coal miners support him. He's talking about health care because there's so many people suffering from opioid addiction, and his opponent wants to try to talk about things in Washington. That's why Conor is winning. And
so
that's
you don't
why
think that
Democrats,
Nancy Pelosi is a drag on Democrats in tough races?
Donald Trump won this district by 19 points in 2016, and Conor Lamb is poised to win tonight. Why? Because he's focused on the issues. He's fighting for health care. He's fighting for pension security. He's fighting for good jobs that pay a decent wage. And his opponent was supporting bills to expand outsourcing of jobs. He supported having foreign steel be used to build buildings. I mean, he is a anti-worker candidate, and Conor Lamb has been standing up for the issues that matter most to people. That's why we're winning.
I want to throw it to Wolf Blitzer right now.
Thanks, Jake. We've got a key race alert. The first votes are being counted very, very early right now. Take a look at this. Barely 1% of the vote is in. Conor Lamb is ahead, the Democrat, 52% to Rick Saccone, 47.2%. He's ahead 452 votes to 411 votes, only 41 votes. These are the first votes that are coming in. We expect the trickle to explode fairly soon. More results coming in. Let's go over to John King at the Magic Wall. Still very, very early, what can we say? But Conor Lamb has, at least at this point, a slight lead.
Right. That's about all we can say looking forward. But if you're in the Lamb campaign, look, this is just one precinct. It's fewer than 500 votes. Conor Lamb is ahead in the slice. This Allegheny County stretches all the way up here. This slice of it down here is in the district. Senator Santorum said earlier in the Pittsburgh suburbs here, Conor Lamb has to keep this blue and keep it blue all night, and he has to win it actually by probably a bigger margin than that. At the moment, one precinct in, you're happy in the Lamb campaign. One other thing to note, this is 40% of the district here, 30 plus here, 20 plus here. Greene County is tiny. It's only about 2% of the district. Conor Lamb is ahead there right now. If this is blue at the end of the night, then this is a blowout. Do not expect this county to be blue at the end of the night. When you get out here in the rural areas, this is reliably red Republican country. This is one or two precincts in this county. Again, if that stays blue, we have a blowout, but very early. We're just getting started here, but the votes have started to come in, and usually once they start to come in, Wolf, the pace starts to pick up. Been through this before.
That Greene County, that county's right on the border with West Virginia right now. Helps explain why it's more conservative, shall we say, than the rest of the state.
Right, but just remember. So, again, very, very early. But Conor Lamb is leading here. I will bet you a couple dollars that doesn't last down there. Again, if it does, it's a blowout. But just remember this. This is where we are in the House race right now. I just want to take this off and just go back in time to the presidential race in this district. Again, Donald Trump won huge down here in this county, huge. It's a small county, not a lot of votes, but runs it up huge here. And then if you come back up here, this was the most interesting part of this district. Donald Trump won it by 20 points. Again, Hillary Clinton won Allegheny County by 16 points. But in this slice of Allegheny County, this is the suburban area south of Pittsburgh. You see it stretched down here. Donald Trump actually narrowly beat her by about 4 points right down here. This area where Conor Lamb is now ahead, that is the absolute key tonight. It's where you have the most Democrats. It's where you have the most people. It's where you also have suburban Republicans looking at Alabama, New Jersey, Virginia last year. Those were the voters who left the President of the United States. So as we watch these numbers come up, again, we're still stuck on this one precinct, and it's down here. It's in the more southeastern part of Allegheny County, if you will, the one precinct that has come in down here. If Conor Lamb needs to win, I would posit he has to win by a little bigger margin than that in this area here, but he's off to the right start. Long way to go.
Just south of Pittsburgh. Let's go back to the 18th congressional district as a whole right now. Some more votes have just come in. You see Rick Saccone, he takes a slight lead, 50.3% to 49%. Once again, very, very early, but you can see what's going on.
14 votes. He's ahead by, again, everybody strap in. This is going to take a little while. But what happened? Some more precincts came in down here in Greene County. And as Greene County came in, this is a reliable Republican area. And as I predicted, it switched back. I assume this one might flip once or twice in the early count, but I assume this one is going to stay red as we go through it. The key is up here. The key is up here. Conor Lamb now ahead. If the math is right there. Yep, some more votes came in up here in the Allegheny County area. So if you go back to the district writ large now, flip. Here we go. Welcome. We're going to go through this for a little bit.
The results are going to be coming in a lot more quickly. We're going to have a lot more coming up. We're going to go live to the candidate headquarters in Pennsylvania as more votes come in. There's certainly a lot at stake right now. Republicans in Trump country, they're trying to hold off a wave of enthusiasm from a fired-up Democratic base, and the Democratic candidate right now in a slight lead.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
More votes are coming in. Let's do another key race alert right now. You can see 2% of the vote in. Still very, very early, but the Democrat, Conor Lamb, is ahead of Rick Saccone, the Republican, 58.7% to 40%. You can see he's up by 523 votes. Still very, very early. Let's go over to John King. His lead has expanded, Conor Lamb, but once again, want to stress only 2% of the vote is in.
Yeah, we got a long way to go. Sometimes you do get early clues, though, as things come in. If you're in the Lamb campaign, number one, you know we got a lot of counting to do. Same in the Saccone campaign you're looking at. But if you're in the Lamb campaign, you're looking at this. The more votes that came in, we're here again in this slice of Allegheny County at the northernmost part of the district, the southernmost part of Allegheny County. He's now ahead 62% to 37%. That is critical. That's a number to watch. We're early on. Vote totals don't march so much. If you talk to the Lamb campaign, Democrats in the state, they think, depending on the turnout in the more rural counties, he needs to be above 55%. Most likely somewhere in the ballpark of 55% when it comes to the Allegheny County slice of the district. Again, if you pull this out here, and if you go back to the presidential campaign, President Trump actually carried this part of Allegheny County. Hillary Clinton won the county at large, but red, red, red. So this tonight has to stay blue for Conor Lamb as it is right now. This is a smaller county. We expected this one, Greene County, where we were before. We expect Rick Saccone to win this. If Conor Lamb can stay above 40%, it's about the margins. In the red counties for Conor Lamb, it's about the margins. Try to get above 40%, as close to 45 as you can get. It's good for you. But this race will be decided right here. It's early, but it's blue right now for Conor Lamb. It has to stay blue throughout the night. Could flip once or twice, as we go through the vote. But at the end of the night, this has to be blue, and he needs to be 55 or above. If he is, he's got a good chance, again, of taking a district that President Trump carried by 20 points just 16 months ago.
Some more votes just came in. Conor Lamb is ahead by 1,100 votes right now. This is a significant district, a significant election, because President Trump was just there over the weekend campaigning for Rick Saccone, so he's got a lot riding on this as well.
He was there over the weekend. You heard him talk about if the Democrats win, they're going to take it away. The president said they'll take away your tax cuts. They'll take away your Second Amendment rights. The Lamb campaign would push back on that, saying he supports the Second Amendment. But again, what the president was trying to do is try to recreate this. Senator Santorum was saying earlier, there's a lot of Democrats here, but they don't vote Democratic in federal elections. They tend now to vote. Senator Casey wins them sometimes, a family history in the state, a more conservative Democrat. But for House, the last two elections, the Republican was unopposed. So President Trump trying to recreate this, or as close as you can to it. But we're in a midterm election year this year. As President Obama learned twice, 2010 and 2014, President Trump learning now, a midterm election year, especially your first one, tends to be a tough climate. At the moment, Conor Lamb is doing exactly what he needs to do. We'll keep counting.
All right, let's take another break. We're going to get more results coming in. We'll be right back.
And welcome back to the special election night edition of AC 360. Taking a look at the votes, only 6% of the votes in. But right now, Conor Lamb ahead by 1,829 votes, 60% to 39% for Rick Saccone. Again, only 6% of the vote in. I want to check in with our correspondents before we go back to the panel at the candidates' headquarters. First to Jason Carroll, covering the Democrat Conor Lamb. Jason?
Well, a few cheers when you saw some of those early numbers go up here at the Lamb campaign headquarters. So lots of excitement here in the room. But a senior campaign advisor tells me, Anderson, that if they are able to pull off an upset here tonight, they're going to owe a great deal of gratitude to the labor community. There's been a great deal of outreach to try to reach out to members of the labor community, especially the builders, the trade unions, the steel workers, and not just in Allegheny County, the most populous part of the district, but also the outreach in the more rural part of the districts as well. And so one of the goals early on in the campaign was just to get within the margin of error with Rick Saccone. They feel as though so far they've been able to accomplish that, but still a lot of crossed fingers in the room tonight. Anderson?
Right, Jason, thanks. We'll check in with you shortly. Let's go to Alex Marquardt, who's covering the Republican Rick Saccone. Alex?
Yeah, Anderson, it's a lot more muted here, much less cheering as people watch these returns come in. We just saw the chairman of the Allegheny County Republican Party just come out to try to rile up the crowd. In addition to those results, those votes coming in that you've seen, we also have heard about the turnout in Allegheny County, the most important county of the 4 in this district. We are told by the spokesman for the county that it is high, that there have been long lines, and that they are going to let anybody who was in line at 8 p.m. when the polls close continue to vote. As for the mood, at the Saccone campaign and Rick Saccone's mood in particular, we just spoke to one of his longtime friends. She said he was anxious to see some numbers. They say they feel good, but that's just anecdotal. That is not based on any data. They have no internal polling. They have no exit polling. They don't have any numbers, frankly. Anybody who might have any data, like the NRCC, the campaign arm of the Republican Party, they're calling here asking for information. This is a very bare bones campaign. So for now, like us, Anderson, they're watching the official results come in.
All right, Alex, thanks very much. I said 8%. Let's put it on the screen. 8% of the vote is now in. Almost 2,000 votes ahead. Conor Lamb is 57% to 41%. Let's go back to our panel. Joe, I know you've been looking at the numbers very closely, where things are coming in. What are you seeing?
Well, when you look at the precincts that are actually in, Conor Lamb is running ahead of where he needs to be, slightly, not by big margins. These are just a few precincts in. But as John pointed out on the wall, you've got a lot of these are coming from Allegheny, but I think they're coming from a part of Allegheny where what Conor Lamb's doing is pretty impressive there. And in Greene County, he's right with the GOP on this thing. I mean, he's really right in way ahead of where I think he should be. So again, they're early precincts, but right now it looks like it's going well for Conor Lamb.
Senator Santorum, you ran in these precincts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking at the precincts as closely as Joe is, but what I would say is that those numbers, and they're primarily Allegheny County numbers, that's pretty much where he needs to be. But again, if they're from the western part of the district, western part of Allegheny County, those would be great numbers. I don't think he's going to get those numbers from there. So again, it all sort of depends if they're from the south.
If these are more south.
If they're more south, those are good numbers, but Saccone's still in the ballgame.
10% of the vote in now. Lamb, 2,400 votes ahead. You know, Jason, we saw President Trump obviously go there this past weekend, made a kind of a rousing speech, a lot of it off the teleprompter for the candidate, also for himself. Do we know yet if President Trump can drive voters to the polls when it's not President Trump being voted on?
Well, I think to kind of reorient the question, I think you're kind of asking the wrong thing. And the fact it's so much of it comes to when the president or when people actually get involved, because so much of this race was determined before the president got involved. I mean, Conor Lamb did a really good job of raising money early, of defining the race. He got out there and presented this image.
Well, is that a wise thing then for the? I mean, if that's true, shouldn't the president get involved earlier?
Well, look, he's got to get out there and support Republicans. But the problem for candidates like Rick Saccone is you can't wait until the 11th hour to become a Trump Republican. If you want to get these Democrats, if you want to get these independents who support these more conservative messages, you got to get out there doing it. I mean, voters are pretty smart. I mean, voters can figure out who's real and who's fake that are on these ballots. And so, of course, the president got out there and supported him. But Conor Lamb had done a lot of this work well before the national media started paying attention.
How did Saccone wait? I mean, he brags he was Trump before Trump. I mean, I don't see him having been reluctant in any way, shape, or form.
Look at his fundraising. I mean, he was outraised 5-1 on fundraising.
Okay, but
clearly,
let's put the money. Okay, but he's not a candidate who was kind of late to the Trump train. He is a Trumpy candidate. He's totally.
But he came across. He came across as establishment. And I think that was part of the problem. He's in the state house. He doesn't come across.
So he had elective office?
No, he very much sounds like he's already part of Washington. I mean, you flip on the TV there, we've been seeing all the TV commercials that are being run, and a lot of it looks really cookie cutter, like we're Washington and we're here to help.
Joe? Yeah, in Alabama, look, what happened is the president with Luther Strange, Roy Moore wins. The president kind of like isn't sure what he's going to do. Then he decides he's for him. But he came to Tuscaloosa, excuse me, I think it was. Or Pensacola, excuse me. Pensacola. When he did, Roy Moore went up by 4 points. We know the intensity on the Republican side went up, and it surged Roy Moore. And so, you know, there's no doubt in my mind.
So you say no doubt he can drive you.
And the thing that I worried about is like, okay, he came in on Friday, you know, on Saturday, Moore was up by 3. On Sunday, he was up by 2. On Monday, up by 1. And on Tuesday, we win by 23,000 votes. What happens if the president came in on Sunday, right? But he came in Saturday in this one, and the margin may have been, we don't know what the margin was, but I don't know. The president actually does energize voters and does move voters, even for somebody who he wasn't, I mean, was he really for Moore? I mean, that whole, he got for him at the end.
He was for Saccone, and Saccone was for Trump, and I disagree with you, Jason. I mean, Rick Saccone is a conservative. He's been a very outspoken. He was running for the United States Senate, by the way, before he decided to switch and run for Congress. He was running as the most conservative guy running for the United States Senate. So I don't think there's any question that Rick Saccone ran with Trump, ran as a conservative, and was very vocal. The point is he didn't have a lot of money, so he couldn't get that message out. And the Republican Party was a little late to the table a little bit about defining him as much as defining. They spent all their money defining Conor Lamb, and you know, Conor had done a great job insulating himself. Look, he's a Marine, he's good looking, he's got a great family name. He says, you know, I'm Catholic, and he says all the right things about, you know, calming down the social conservative things. He didn't run around and talk about climate change in a coal area and a gas area. I mean, he ran the district and was the right candidate for them to run. And I keep coming back to the fact, 25,000 more registered Democrats. You can say Greene County is a Republican area. Yes, it votes Republican in national elections, and yes, it voted for Tim Murphy for all those years. But there's still Democrats down there, and he is a Democrat they can vote for.
There are Democrats who vote for Republicans, though. I mean, it's misleading, I think, to say that, because, you know, the last time there was a Democrat in that seat was, what, 15 years ago or something? I mean, it's not, you know, you can't really compare those things. And, look, this wasn't even on the radar for the Democratic Party. This was not a place that they even saw as being as in play.
We got to take a quick break. We're tracking the votes in Pennsylvania. Conor Lamb with his largest lead yet. Votes are still coming in, though. Still just 13% of the votes are in. We'll check in with John King at the Magic Wall when we come back.
Welcome back. We're following this special election in Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district. Let's get another key race alert. Take a look at this. The Democrat Conor Lamb maintaining a significant lead. 16% of the vote is now in. Conor Lamb has 58.7% of the vote. Rick Saccone, the Republican, has 40.7%. Conor Lamb ahead by more than 5,000 votes right now. This is a significant race. Let's go over to John King, who's watching all these counties in Pennsylvania very, very closely right now. And the president, as I like to say, he was just there over the weekend campaigning for Rick Saccone.
And if you're in Saccone headquarters, you're getting a bit nervous right now. You don't need to panic yet, but 16% reporting. Conor Lamb, 59% if you round that up to 41% if you round that up. That is throughout the district. About 2/3 of the vote counted so far, roughly, coming from Allegheny County. It's the most Democratic area of the district, and in that county, the piece of the county that's in the district, Allegheny County stretches way up here, but in the slice of it that's in the 18th congressional district here, Conor Lamb running up a pretty impressive margin, 60% to 39%. His campaign thinks if they keep that above 55, they're in play to win this district. So far, he's doing exactly what he needs to do. This is 42% roughly of the voting age, the registered voters in the district. It's the biggest slice of the voters right there. So if you're in the Lamb campaign, that's your most important number. Stay above 55 in Allegheny County. This, if you're in the Saccone campaign, is troublesome. This should be red. Now, we're only at 8% in Washington County, but 53-48. Just for comparison, go back to the presidential race. Hillary Clinton got only 34%, 35% if you round that up in this county. Again, 35% for Secretary Clinton. Conor Lamb at the moment, only 8%, at the moment in the lead there. So he's running competitive, overperforming Clinton, if you will, in a Republican county. This is the big question mark, though. Westmoreland County is a Republican county. This piece of Westmoreland County in the district, it's about 34% of the registered voters in the district. We have nothing yet. Nothing yet. They traditionally come in a little later than the rest of the district. If you're in Saccone headquarters, you need this to, when they do come in, you need it to be red, and you need your margin here to be similar to the Conor Lamb margin here. He's at 60-40, if you round the numbers there. Rick Saccone needs at least that here as these numbers come in here as we count the votes. Just want to come back fully to the district now. We're almost at 20% of the vote counted. Again, the bulk of what we have is from in here. Rick Saccone is leading down here in Greene County, but we're at 45% already. Very small. We're only going to get a few thousand votes out of here. It's much less populated than the other counties in the district. So this is a margin. But again, even there, for Conor Lamb, it's about the margins. You know you're going to lose Greene County. Not a lot of votes, but Hillary Clinton got 27%. Conor Lamb's getting more than 10 points higher than that. If you're in the Lamb campaign, you're satisfied with that. You've got to cut the margins here. This is a surprise at the moment. If this stays blue, this race is over, but only at 8% so far in Washington County. And again, this is the biggest basket of votes, biggest basket of Democratic votes, also suburban votes here. First votes just came in from Westmoreland, a big drop, 27%. Rick Saccone, 54-45. He's leading here. That's good for him, but I just want to show you something. President Trump, 65% to 31%. So if you look at the presidential race, turnout will be nowhere near the presidential race. This is a midterm election, and it's an off-year special election. But if you think about it, President Trump won the district by 20 points by running up a very big margin here in Westmoreland. And at the moment in this race, Rick Saccone well below, underperforming the president here, significantly underperforming the president here. Again, Conor Lamb with 58% here. The most surprising part of this race, this district in 2016, was, again, in this slice of Allegheny County that is part of the district, Donald Trump actually beat Hillary Clinton in this slice. She won the county, but he won the part that's in the 18th district by 4 points. So as we continue to count the votes tonight, we'll bring the district up full. We're up to 30%. Conor Lamb, 53% there. I just want to check this again. Still above 55 in Allegheny County. So it's getting a little tighter. But if you're in the Lamb campaign, you like the margin so far. You're waiting to see more of the votes come in here, and you're waiting to see if this stays blue.
And we're, once again, almost a third of the vote is now in. Let's go over to Jake. And Dana, you know, Jake, the president was just there campaigning. If the Democrats do win this special election in Pennsylvania tonight, they're going to be encouraged to believe, you know what, they might be able to win a whole bunch of other congressional seats in November and become the House majority. That's exactly right. And of course, Republicans outspent the Democrats by more than 2-1 for this congressional seat in a very Republican district. So one imagines, even though the results are not fully in and we don't know who's going to win, so far it looks good for the Democrat. And I wonder if Republicans are worrying. Our senior congressional correspondent, Manu Raju, is tracking reaction to the race on Capitol Hill. And Manu, what are you hearing? I got to believe that Republicans already kind of jittery and worrying about a so-called blue wave are not reassured by what they're seeing on their TV screens this evening.
Yeah, no question about it, Jake. They're very nervous about this midterm environment. They're seeing Trump's poor numbers. They're seeing what's happening here in Pennsylvania 18. And they're also nervous that they have not been able to effectively sell their new tax law because of the daily chaos that seems to be coming out of Washington. Now, tomorrow I'm hearing that behind closed doors, Republican leaders in the House will have a briefing with their members of the House Republican Conference to lay out the real challenges and opportunities that present themselves ahead of the midterm elections. They're going to take a lot of questions. Steve Stivers, who's the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee, which oversees this effort, he's going to take questions from House Republicans about what went wrong here, assuming that they do lose this seat tonight, as well as how they can potentially keep their majority as Republicans fear that the prospects of them holding on to power can grow increasingly slim. And one thing, Jake, that we're going to be looking out for, too, is any possible further retirements. That's one thing that's hobbling the Republican chances of holding the majority. Right now, Republican officials are not expecting a wave of retirements, but there could be a couple others. And one reason why tomorrow is so important to make it clear that they could still win, but they just need to do things a little better and sell their message a little bit more effectively, Jake.
All right, Manu Raju. And Dana, one of the things that Republicans had been talking a lot about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, was how much the president's tax cut bill was going to help Rick Saccone. But anecdotally, at the least, they stopped talking as much about the tax cut and started more just attacking Conor Lamb, the Democrat.
That's right. They stopped talking about it. They stopped running ads on it. I was just communicating with a Republican who insisted the reason for that is because they realized it was too late to have an effective message on taxes because there were other issues that Conor Lamb was already winning on, which is why they turned, frankly, negative against Conor Lamb. You know, unclear how much that played a role. But just to sort of bounce off of what Manu was just reporting, that the chairman of the Republican arm, the campaign arm that elects House candidates, is going to talk to all House Republicans tomorrow. My understanding is that the message he is going to send is campaigns matter and candidates matter, which seems so basic. And, you know, if you're watching at home, you say, of course they do. But this is, they hope on the Republican side, assuming it goes the way they think it will, which is that they will lose this seat, a wake-up call for candidates to really start to focus more aggressively on their campaigns, because this Democratic resistance is real enough for a district where Donald Trump won by 20 points to look like it's going to go to a Democratic seat.
And, of course, that message, of course, implicitly is an insult to the Republican in the race, Anderson Cooper. But we already heard at the end of last week that people close to President Trump reported that he was bad-mouthing Rick Saccone, the Republican, likely an expectation of not such a great night for the Republicans this evening.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot more on that. Let's check the numbers right now. I think 35% of the vote, 35% in, 5,694. Conor Lamb is ahead by. David Jellian, you were talking about this during the break, that this isn't just about these two candidates.
Right. There is no doubt, as Dan was saying, and every Republican who talked to, Jason will say it till he's blue in the face tonight, that this is all about one candidate and an underperforming candidate, and it's all. That ignores the larger environment that we're in. And this will not be breaking news to any Republican. They know they're in a tough environment, but we shouldn't lose sight of that. This is part of that very tough environment. We didn't see five House special elections last year, throughout the whole year, with Democratic overperformance like we did not see in years or ever in some of these places. Obviously, New Jersey's a Democratic state, but New Jersey and Virginia governor's race, the Alabama special, which had unique circumstances. You could put the caveats in wherever you want. But if you deny what this is part of, why tonight is so big, why Republicans went all in for more than $10 million on the air industries, it is because it is so indicative of that larger story of the headwinds, massive headwinds, that Republicans are facing this year. And we just shouldn't lose sight of that as we talk about this individual race.
And that is why you see the president he's talking to others and understanding that this is an uphill battle, privately distancing himself from the Republican candidate, because he does that if he thinks the guy's going to lose, and he doesn't want it to have anything to do with these anti-Trump headwinds that David is talking about. So he wants to make it a micro matter when in fact it's a macro matter, and it's larger than that. And you can look at the Virginia gubernatorial race. You can see there again they had a candidate that matched the state. They did very well, and this is an issue for Donald Trump. And I think we'll see it over and over again, which is Democrats are overperforming because of enthusiasm. Period.
Two observations, if I can. First, maybe a little levity. Phones were ringing all across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the voter registration offices because there were so many ads and there was so much bleed through all the cable outlets, including ours, all across the state, that people were calling up dumbfounded as to why their polling places weren't open. They didn't realize that this was an election only in the 18th congressional district. The good news for Pennsylvania is those folks were not allowed to vote. The other observation that I would make is that I think this vote is going to come quickly. Maybe I'm mistaken, but remember, there's one thing on the ballot. There is one issue to count, and that's it. So I would expect that once this begins to really roll, perhaps within the next 45 minutes, we're going to see something decisive. Famous last words.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, what David's talking about, the sort of overarching kind of narrative and chaos that we see out of the White House and how that's affecting voters, and you look at the data, Trump is losing support among the groups we talked about. Suburban white women. This is a district that's emblematic of that. We've seen that in Virginia. We saw it in Alabama. We'll see again how Saccone does with union voters. And you've seen and independents, right? I mean, he did well with independents. He had this sort of outsider view, but it looks like he's losing some support among those key groups, and he might not be able to keep that coalition.
But to Joe's
by the way, 38% of the vote now in, 5,600 votes ahead.
To Joe's point, and I think this was your point, will we see tonight potentially that he's not only losing support with those voters, but with his base?
Well, that's happening.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's key here. I think that's sort of the important thing you look at, which is that he's not impenetrable here.
Right.
He's not able to transfer.
That's the thing. I mean, we're talking. Look, Saccone has picked up in some of these precincts. He could conceivably go ahead and win this thing by a point.
Right.
But the reality is, this was a district Trump won by 20 points. There are plenty, 23, 24 districts where Hillary Clinton won, and there's a Republican member.
Right.
This isn't good for those people, for those Republican incumbents. There are a whole bunch of districts in this country that Trump won by 5 points. If you're a Republican, this isn't good for you and your running.
Well, hold on, but you look at the U.S.
points.
Senate. Look at the U.S. Senate. Look how, if the election were today, you would have 5 sitting Democratic U.S. senators who would get bounced. The fact of the matter is, the Republican in this special election House race, they're basically trying to push a car uphill with rope.
And in Alabama,
he's just not a very good
29 points and 28 points, and he lost that too. I'm not making any predictions about House or Senate. I'm just saying that this is no matter how you look at it, no matter what the results are, even if Saccone does go ahead slightly here at the end and pulls this out, it's really, really bad news.
Senator, and then we got to go.
I mean, okay, I agree with both of you. I mean, it's both. I mean, the reality is, Conor Lamb. There are going to be a lot more Conor Lambs on the ballot because Democrats are energized, more candidates are running, and better candidates are running. Why? Because it's a midterm presidential election. Right. It's always a bad election for the party in power, and we have a president who's a very polarizing president. That reminds me a lot of 2010. I mean, that's what we had with Barack Obama. That's not saying anything bad about Democrats. Don't go around and condemn Barack Obama for being a bad president because he stood up for what he believed in. He fought for what he believed in. He was very controversial. So be it. But there are consequences, and the consequences are you get better candidates on the other side, and you get more energy on the other side, and it makes these races tighter. Rick Saccone can still pull this race off. It's going to be tough, but he can still pull this race off. But the bottom line is, it's candidates and atmosphere.
Seems right now the percentage is jumping about 2% at each clip. It's at 40% now. Some 7,300 votes. Conor Lamb in the lead. We're going to take a short break. We're watching the votes come in from Pennsylvania. The question is, will Democratic enthusiasm be enough to pull off an upset in a deep red district? More on that ahead.
Welcome back. We're covering the special election in Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district. Another key race alert right now. Almost half of the vote has now been counted, about 47%. Conor Lamb, the Democrat, maintaining his advantage over Rick Saccone, the Republican, 53.8% to 45.6%. He's got a 7,600 lead right now. Conor Lamb, the Democrat, over Rick Saccone. Let's go over to John King at the Magic Wall. He's doing really well. Conor Lamb, just south of Pittsburgh in Allegheny County, where almost half of the vote, projected vote, resides.
More than 40% of the vote will come out of here, depending on turnout. That could go a little higher. You're right. Again, this is the district-wide right now, a 7,600 vote lead, 7,650 there, almost up to half the vote. Let's just go through what we have, as you mentioned. This is the most important slice of the district, is right here. It's the Pittsburgh suburbs, the southern part of Allegheny County, 57% to 42% right now. Both campaigns will tell you Conor Lamb has to be above 55% or above in this district to compete. Then the turnout could come into play if Saccone performs otherwise. But right now, that's about where that's.
And in Allegheny County, 68% of the vote has already been counted.
So that's part of the question. We have 30%, give or take a little, still to come in. Does Conor Lamb keep that margin, number one, stay above 55? And number two, where's the turnout? More populated precincts, smaller precincts, what happens to the math, the basic number to run up his margin? Because he needs to run up the margin because you're starting to see Rick Saccone, this is a more Republican, this is the part of Westmoreland County that's in the 18th district, 56 to 44 if you round up. Most people in the district will tell you Saccone probably has to hit 60 in this part of the district to get up. But this has changed a bit. He's performing, it's red in what should be red, I would argue we're at 53%. As more comes in for Saccone to tighten the race, has to get that up 57.
And about a third of the vote is in Westmoreland County.
That's why. You got a little more than 40% here, about 34% here. This is a big basket of should-be Republican votes. If Conor Lamb, just to go back and show you, again, presidential years are not midterm years in terms of turnout, but in terms of the performance of the district, Hillary Clinton got only 31% and some change in this county. Conor Lamb at the moment is getting 43% in a close race. Margins matter. So he's overperforming the presidential candidate, if you will. That was to
Take a look at this. 53% of the vote
is
now in.
That's in that county. So if you come out now you're up to 56% in the district.
56% of the district as a whole.
The lead's gone down a little bit. The lead has gone down from 7,500 to 5,100 right here. And so what's happening? We're getting more votes from these more rural, more Republican counties. Washington County here. They're splitting this county. Again, if this holds up as we get the 2/3 that are missing, then Conor Lamb's going to win this race. Rick Saccone has to win the Washington County part of this district by more than a few votes. And so without a doubt. Down here, Greene County, not to minimize Greene County, but it's a small, much more rural, much less populated. If we're in a race an hour from now, 2 hours from now, that's 200 or 300 votes, then the fact that Conor Lamb got over 40%, if that holds down here, could be a significant part in the end. But there's just fewer votes down
here.
Only
2% of the vote.
Only 2% of the vote. So if it's very close, we'll come down here. No offense to the people of Greene County, this is what matters most, and we're up to 72% now. So the most Democratic part of the district, and the place where the Lamb campaign thinks they can get suburban Republicans who, as I've mentioned earlier, places like New Jersey, the Alabama Senate race, suburban Republicans who cast an anti-Trump vote, if you will, by voting for a Democrat. This is where most of them are. Conor Lamb needs to stay above 55. We're up to 72% of the vote. See if he holds that margin as it comes in, and I just want to check again, 53% here. Rick Saccone needs to boost that as the rest of that vote comes in. And then over here again, 33% in Washington County, which is the rest 22% of the vote in the district here. Only a third of the vote in here. If it stays like this, that leaves Conor Lamb in a good position to eke out a victory. Rick Saccone needs to get that above 50, probably closer to 60. Again, just for a little bit of contrast here, President Trump gets 61% in this county. The Republican candidate tonight right now is just at 50. Come over to this other big Republican county. Rick Saccone's at 56%, if you round that up. President Trump was at 65%. So again, you're not going to get the turnout numbers, the number of voters out in a non-presidential year, but in terms of the percentages, Rick Saccone has to get pretty close to where the president was, and if you're looking at it right now, 58%. Votes are starting to come in fast, as Michael Smerconish predicted. Maybe he knows the Powerball number as well. Votes are starting to come in quickly here. Conor Lamb holding on because of this, the lead in Allegheny County, which is up to 72%, 10,000 votes. That's the difference right now.
I suspect we're going to get a lot more votes in the coming minutes. We're going to continue our special coverage on this important congressional special election right after this.
And welcome back. We are counting the votes. 60% of the votes in. Conor Lamb ahead by 7,300 votes. Again, 60%, 52% to 46%. Conor Lamb ahead of Rick Saccone. Joe Biden, we talked about President Trump visiting. Joe Biden came to campaign for Conor Lamb as well.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because Joe Kennedy III and Martin O'Malley were in there early on as well. But when you got to the end here, there was only one prominent national Democrat that the Lamb campaign thought would be a good idea to bring in. And this goes to Rick's point earlier tonight. You can't run in this district. I think you said, as a Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama Democrat, you didn't mention Joe Biden when you were listing the Democrats you can't run as. And Conor Lamb knew that. And so this is going to become, if indeed he wins tonight, and by the way, we're looking at a 6-point lead for the Democrat in a district Donald Trump won by 20 points. So this is a pretty astonishing number that we're looking at right now. Joe Biden is going to be part of this larger conversation about the path forward for the Democratic Party out of here, of any potential lessons learned here. He's, if indeed he does want to put it all together and try to pursue the presidency in 2020, he's going to make the argument, I'm the guy that can go to the places that Donald Trump had some success in and talk to those voters and try to bring them back into the Democratic fold. And tonight's result may give him some evidence for that argument.
But Senator Santorum, you made the point early on that Conor Lamb, had he had a primary, he may not have been able to win on a Democratic primary.
I think the days of Joe Biden and the Democratic Party are over. I mean, you know, blue-collar Joe isn't going to win a primary with California, New York. I mean, it's just the votes aren't there.
But that argument respectfully cuts the same way, I think, against Republican candidates. I mean, think of Governor Castle and Christine O'Donnell. There are a whole host of folks that would win a general election, but they can't survive a Republican primary.
Democrats can get them can get in their own way in this election cycle. We haven't had very many primaries so far. We'll wait and see who gets through these Democratic primaries. So could the Democrats have a big sweep? Yes, if they're really strategic and smart. Or we could have Christine O'Donnell's and Sharon Angles and a whole bunch of others who get through, who are just too radical, and Republicans.
Joe, do you think the age of a Joe Biden Democrat is over?
No, like I said, I think we may find that out in 2020 if he decides to run for president. There are a lot of people in the party that would like to see him try that. I'm not kicking sides in it, but I don't think his days are over at all. He was one of the only, again, came to Alabama, and it was a big success for us in the state. I think the thing about these races in a midterm, particularly this cycle for Democrats, is keep it local. The second the race becomes nationalized, people go back to their tribe. They become red voters or blue voters, and you can't win in a red district.
And Conor Lamb really focused on that, keeping it local.
Yes, keeping it local, because if you make this about red versus blue, and you're in a red district, that's not going to work too well.
And he never
that's
did
what Democrats
cable.
need to learn about this election. Just, again, regardless of whether Conor Lamb actually pulls this out, which I think he might, but if he doesn't, it's still the lesson. You have to run Democrats that fit the district.
62% of the votes in, 7,600 ahead.
But this is Joe Biden's argument. It was his argument to Hillary Clinton, which wasn't listened to enough, he would argue, which is that there is a way, and that Biden can appeal to working class Democrats, some whom have been disaffected and went to vote for Donald Trump because they couldn't stand Hillary Clinton, and that Biden can speak to those working class voters. And that's why he was brought in this state. And that's why he campaigned in those states for Hillary Clinton. And that's what he truly believes and thinks. And whether Biden runs or not, it's a lesson the Democrats need to learn from him. The problem is, who's the messenger for that kind of a Democrat other than Joe Biden? Right. I mean, it sort of speaks to what the Democratic Party is lacking right now, which would be somebody like Joe Biden who maybe is not Joe Biden.
But Gloria, they have Nancy Pelosi.
We'd say that's not it. I would
well,
tell
I mean,
you.
Conor Lamb would say the same thing.
But that's always the case in a midterm with the out party that doesn't have the president. And that fight happens in 2000. In the next presidential, 15, 16 people run, like happened with the Republicans in 2016. Well, yeah, 53. and then we see which one emerges as the leader of the party and pulls it together. No one would have predicted Donald Trump.
But Biden helped Obama that way. I mean, I would argue Obama had that same kind of a problem, and that's where Biden helped him out.
But I think but Obama also expanded the party, right? The surge voters, the African American voters, and you wonder if Joe Biden, he's obviously got some baggage. He's older. He's run before, never won, I don't think, a single primary when he actually ran for president or a caucus. So does he might attract kind of working class white voters, blue collar Democrats, but does he also energize African American voters, younger voters, Latino voters, and women voters? That's still an open question.
I want to go back to where I began the evening, which was I think margin matters even more so than Conor Lamb's victory. And I'm not suggesting that it's a playbook that works across the country. This is a guy in his introductory campaign commercial who wanted to be photographed with an AR-15 in his hands. It is a strategy that I think can work for Democrats in some of those Rust Belt states that were responsible for putting Donald Trump over the top.
And I think it's also a message as well, I think, for Republican candidates not named Donald Trump. You better give the voters something to be excited about. I mean, I was taking a look at Rick Saccone's closing message, or one of his closing ads, and he's out there, he's got the sweater on, he's saying, you know, I've worked with Republicans, I've worked with Democrats. There is nothing that will make voters just change a channel or than looking at something where they're talking like they're already part of Washington. You need to talk about actually what you believe in, how you're going to be tough on things, you're going to get things done. People are still mad at Washington. They're still looking at Washington, even though Trump is in the White House. Like, there's a lot of dysfunction.
Sweater vests are very much.
But one of the things that happens in these is you're worried. I mean, there was a lot of concern in the party. If can a Conor Lamb take advantage of the energized Democrats while still reaching over and appealing to Republicans? Would there be sort of less energy on the Democratic side. That's clearly not happening either. It didn't happen in Alabama either. In fact, we had massive turnout on the Democratic side. So that it's actually possible to have all this energy on the Democratic side and at the same time, with the right messenger, pull in enough Republicans to win a district like this, or at least scare the living daylights out of the Republicans for the next hour.
65% of the vote in, 7,141 votes. Conor Lamb ahead. Still too close to call. The race in Pennsylvania, though, is tightening. We're going to take a look at exactly where the votes have already come in and where they have yet to come in. Obviously, that's crucial. We'll continue our special coverage right after this.
Welcome back to this our special coverage of this election in the 18th District of Pennsylvania. We got another key race alert. It's tightened a bit. Take a look at this right now. 71% of the vote is now in this Pennsylvania district. Conor Lamb, the Democrat, he's ahead by about 5,100 votes over Rick Saccone, 51.5% to 47.9%. 71% of the vote is in. Let's go over to John King at the Magic Wall. I guess the key question right now, the outstanding votes, where are they?
We're getting into crunch time. The biggest basket of outstanding votes is actually in the third largest of the 4 counties that are in this district, pieces of the county district, which is Washington County. It's been stuck at 33% reporting for quite some time, and it's a dead heat. Now, Rick Saccone with a very minor lead there, fewer than 100 votes lead. If that stays like this, as they fills in, this is the key to the race right now, in my view. I'll get through the other counties in a minute, but Washington County needs to stay red for Rick Saccone to win, and he needs to win he can't win by a few votes. He's got to get that number, I would posit, closer to 60%. So we'll see. There's 2/3 of the vote out. We don't know which precincts they are, whether they're up here where you have more suburban voters, down here it's much more rural. We don't know the answer to that question, at least I don't at this second. So watch this. We expect when that changes, sometimes when you're stuck at 33% for a long time, we'll get a lot of votes quickly. For Rick Saccone, that margin needs to change right here in Washington County. Number 2, one of the reasons he tightened was because more votes came in the Westmoreland, the part of Westmoreland County that's in the district. We're up to 77% there. And you see, I said earlier, he needs to be closer to 60%. Most of his campaign people would tell you that. He has stretched it up a little bit. He's starting to inch up. He needs to pull more votes out of Westmoreland County, which is 34% of the district. This piece of the district here, as we get the final 23%, Rick Saccone needs to change that number because he needs the math. You see about 6,000, little short of 6,000 votes there. Why does he need more? Because of this. Come over to Allegheny County, and this is held consistent. We're up to 85%. So if you're Conor Lamb, these are where your votes are coming from. Most of them are in, still 15% out, though, and he's been in the ballpark of a 13,000 vote there for a while. So if he holds somewhere in 13,000 range out of the Allegheny County area, Rick Saccone's got to make it up out here.
Stand by for a moment. I want to go to Gary Tuckman. He's in Allegheny County for us right now. What are you seeing over there, Gary? What are you hearing?
Well, Wolf, Allegheny County is about 40% of the district vote, so this is the most important county. And we're in a giant warehouse here in Pittsburgh. This is actually, the warehouse is not in the district, but it is in Allegheny County. And this is where all the absentee ballots are arriving for this county. Trucks and cars are pulling in, and just literally 5 minutes ago, Wolf, the absentee ballots started arriving, and they are being counted in this room behind me. And with us right now is the boss of all this. This is Mark Wolasek. He's the elections division manager here in Allegheny County. First of all, how's the voting going? How's everything going with the county so far? Smoothly?
It's going very well. We are at about 82% as of 10 minutes.
I think it's even a little higher than that. Okay. We just heard the last minute. So we're very high. The absentee ballots, do we know how many absentee ballots will be coming here total? Because there are more still to come.
There are approximately 4,100 issued. I would anticipate probably 3,700, 3,800 have been returned, and that's how many will be coming here tonight to be scanned on our optical scan machines.
Yeah, I'll let the camera get in between us so we can take a look at the people counting them while I talk to you. But how long will it take to count all the absentee ballots?
I would think by midnight we should be finished.
Oh, so this will take from now until midnight?
Yes.
Now, we watched everyone get sworn in before they started counting. Why do you swear people in? What's the purpose of that?
Under the Pennsylvania Election Code, we're required to take the constitutional oath of office when we begin tabulating votes on election night.
When will the votes be added to the total? As soon as they're counted?
No, at the final tabulation at the end of the night is when we add the absentee ballots.
Oh, I see. So they don't get added 10 or 20 or 30 at a time. You wait till you get all 4,000.
That's right, because they have to be downloaded on a disk and then placed into the system.
Where is the outstanding vote in the county as far as the regular vote? Do we know? We have 86%. Do we have any idea?
I did not look. No, I did not look. I can't answer.
Is there a specific pattern each election, or does it vary each time?
I think generally, you know, it's the districts that are geographically further away from the regional reporting centers just take longer to get there.
Okay, Mark, good luck the rest of the night.
Okay, great.
We appreciate it.
Sure.
We'll be around, Jake and Wolf, as the absentee ballots continue to come into this building. Back to you.
Every vote counts, as they say. Gary, thanks very much. And let's review right now, John, as we take a look at this 18th congressional district. 72% of the vote is now in. Conor Lamb, the Democrat, he still maintains a lead, 5,400 vote lead over Rick Saccone.
So 3 big pieces to this. The lead is because here, Allegheny County has a 13,000 vote here. 5,300 district-wide, 13,000 of it right here. As the final 15% comes in Allegheny County, it's critical for Conor Lamb to keep this margin, run up some more math. Why is it critical? Because as more vote comes in, we're now up to 88% in Westmoreland County. I said earlier, Rick Saccone needs to get closer to 60. He's been stuck at 57. You look at that, I think that's a pretty strong performance. But if you look at the presidential race, President Trump at 65% plus in this county. Rick Saccone, to offset what Conor Lamb is doing is Allegheny County, he's got to run up a better margin here. There's still more of the vote to come in. We'll see if that number stays up. But again, you're looking here shy of 10,000, if you will, a little short of that there, 9,000. It's hard to beat the margin here. And this, to me, is the key. We're still at 33% in Washington County, and they're running dead even. So if it stays roughly even, Conor Lamb's going to win this district. If the vote that's out is more Republican, I can't tell you where the precincts are at the moment. If this changes and starts to move Saccone's way, still got 2/3 of the vote out here. It's about 22% of the district here in Washington County. If it starts to come in, and it starts to come in heavy Republican, you're going to see the margin change, and then we'll be doing the late count in Allegheny. We're up to 91% now, 57%. The key for the Lamb campaign for them is have to be above 55. Every inch you get above, you need more of that. And now we're up to...
It's gotten tighter right now. Right. The Conor Lamb lead over Rick Saccone is only about 3,500 votes. Now it's just gone back up a little bit, 4,174 votes. 78% of the vote is now in, 51% to 48.4%. Remember, Conor Lamb, the Democrat, is ahead of Rick Saccone. This is a district that Donald Trump carried in 2016 by almost 20 points.
He carried it by 20 points, and he won everywhere in the district, including the slice of Allegheny County. Hillary Clinton won the county, but this slice of it that's in the 18th district, Donald Trump carried, which is why this is so significant to Conor Lamb tonight, because he's running up the margin here. We're up to 70. I just want to see. That's what I was waiting for. This was at 33% when we started this conversation. Now we're up to 75%. It was even. Rick Saccone has taken a much healthier lead there, but I would argue, I'm not sure that's enough. If you're Rick Saccone, that you got to be closer to 60. If Conor Lamb can stay at 57, 58 in Allegheny County and keep the big, this is where you have more people, the suburbs here, keep the lead here, Rick Saccone has to offset it here. 2,000 votes, that's not a big enough lead. Not big enough to offset it, if you will, to cut into it. And in Westmoreland County, as the rest of the vote comes in here, 12%, he's got to boost this a little bit. 56%, 57%, that's a healthy win normally. But again, if you go back to presidential performance, I just want to show you President Trump at much higher than that. So we'll keep counting them. It is getting tighter. 2,500 votes right now.
It's gotten
we're getting tighter as we go.
Even as we speak right now, we're going to stay on top of this. John, stick around. We're going to continue to count the votes in Pennsylvania. Conor Lamb holds a small lead in the special congressional election. Much more right after this. Got another key race alert. Look how tight it's getting right now. 87% of the vote is in. The Democrat Conor Lamb, he has a slight advantage over Rick Saccone, the Republican, right now by almost 2,500 votes. Look at this, 50.4% for Conor Lamb, 49% for Rick Saccone. This is a tight race, 13% of the votes still outstanding. Let's go over to John King. And a lot will depend where those outstanding votes are, the absentee ballots as well. This could wind up being a real nail-biter.
Yeah. Time to make some espresso
yeah.
As we count them. Look, as you mentioned, 87% in district-wide, just shy of 2,500 vote lead for the Democrat Conor Lamb. He has that lead because of this, a big lead so far in Allegheny County. This is south of Pittsburgh, not all of the counties in the district. This slice of the county is in the 18th congressional district. Suburban voters, most of the Democrats who live in the districts, registered Democrats, more of them are here, more people here. 91% reporting. 57%, 58%, if you round that up to 42%. This is where Conor Lamb's margin of victory is coming from, right up there so far. What he needs is, as the rest of this vote comes in, he needs to keep the margins like this because he needs more votes here, even though there's only 9% left. He needs more to offset what we've seen happen as the vote starts to came in later from the rural areas. The west piece of Westmoreland County that's in the district here, 57% to 42%. Again, you see the lead there, Saccone leading by just shy of 10,000 here. Again, I would argue we have 12% in this district out. When that comes in, he has to hope it's from more Republican areas that boost that up a little bit. It's a healthy lead in this area. If Conor Lamb keeps his margin up here, it might not be healthy enough. Washington County, remember, was tied at 33%. We're up to 75% now. Rick Saccone has pulled away there, just shy of 2,000 votes. Doing the rough math, again, it's an impressive, but if you go back to presidential performance, 61% for President Trump, 52% for Rick Saccone. Again, if this margin holds up when the rest of Allegheny County comes in, underperforming the president here, the third largest county in the state, and here, the second largest county in the district, excuse me, not the state, could be the difference. There's one more county, more rural Greene County, we'll come to it this way, down in the bottom half. It's a tiny slice, a little over 2% of the district in terms of population. It's a much more rural area. 100%. 100% is in. So Rick Saccone, A, he can't count for any more votes out of this most Republican area, and B, again, he got 58% of the vote. Normally you would think that's a pretty big win. Again, if you compare it to presidential performance, not always fair. Presidential year is different from a midterm year, especially in a special election. But if you're looking back at the Trump coalition, does the president get his voters to come out after making the visit? Rick Saccone underperforming the president in this. I wish I could go back a couple cycles and say how's he doing opposed to various Republican candidates, but the last two cycles, the Republican congressman ran unopposed in this district. So we're comparing it to the most recent election to get a clue at it. So I've just come back to the full district at 88%. 2,800 vote lead for Conor Lamb. He's at just 50.5% district-wide, 50.5. This is the difference right here. Suburbs south of Pittsburgh, the lower slice of Allegheny County in this district. Again, more Democrats, more suburban, more people. Conor Lamb racking it up here by a healthy margin. Rick Saccone winning the other more Republican counties, but not by as big a margin, and there simply aren't as many people.
That's Westmoreland County. If we go back to the 18th congressional district as a whole, right now go back to the whole district. There you see 91% of the vote is now in, and the lead has narrowed. Only 1,549 votes. The lead for Conor Lamb over Rick Saccone. It's very, very tight. Let's not forget. You make a good point. This has been a solidly Republican congressional district for at least 15 years.
It has been, to the point that the Republican congressman who resigned in disgrace, but the last two times Democrats didn't even field a candidate. So normally you look at the last couple of cycles. You don't go back too far. The lines of the district have changed. The demographics have changed and the like. But that's why it's such a big deal. The president carried it by 20 points. The previous Republican didn't have an opponent 2 elections in a row. Our panelists have been talking about the distinctive how Conor Lamb has run a race for the district. I just want to check when we get up to 91 where that vote came in from. Here's where it came in. They jumped from 88 to 90% here in Washington County. And again, that's a lead in a Republican county, but I would guess in the
Go back to the district as a whole. Look at this now.
There we go.
The lead for Conor Lamb is now only 703 votes, 49.9% to 49.5%. Look at how tight this race is with 94% of the vote in.
And so let's look again. What went up? 97% Westmoreland County. The Westmoreland County part, that jumped up. It's a Republican area, so that's why. Now you're just shy of 10,000 votes there for the lead there. I said earlier, probably needs to be at 60% in the part of Westmoreland County that's in the district to win. His numbers have been inching up. Might not be high enough, but they are moving up. That's where those votes came from when this went up to 97%. I just want to check over here. 90% in Washington County. So if the remaining 10% comes in, Rick Saccone will get more votes out of here. That 53% might not be enough if that holds. And then the key is to check here. We're up to 93%. And this margin has held pretty consistently.
In Allegheny.
Yeah, and again, fewer percentage of precincts still out, smaller number there, but more people live here. So when they come in, if these margins hold, Conor Lamb's going to get some more votes when they come in. But just to pull it back out, 703 votes at 94%, as I said. Espresso time.
They're going to be counting the absentee ballots, about 3,700 in Allegheny County itself. Let's take another quick break. A very, very tight race in Pennsylvania. Our special coverage continues right after this.
And this is the very definition of a tight race. 95% of the votes are in. Conor Lamb still has a lead, but only by 928 votes. It's 49.9% to 49.5%. Our Gary Tuchman is at a warehouse in Allegheny County where they are counting the absentee ballots. Gary, explain what you're looking at and how this works.
Okay, Anderson. Allegheny County has 40% of the 18th district vote. Incredibly important. As we speak, absentee ballots are arriving. In these white envelopes, these are the absentee ballots. What happens after the people get the absentee ballots, these machines, these great machines, there's 4 of them right over here, those are the scanners. And those ballots are put inside the scanners, and they immediately tabulate the vote if it's for the Democrat or the Republican. But you won't see those on our tote boards in the studio because they will wait until they tabulate every absentee ballot, and they're not all here yet. They gave out 4,200 absentee ballots. There's no way to know how many they will get. Right now, hundreds of them have arrived, but they expect there are at least hundreds more still to come. So we won't get the total number until they are all done. But as they go into these gray machines, they are immediately tabulated, and we'll see the results a little bit later. Anderson.
And Gary, I should just point out, still 95% of the vote, but a jump of about 200 votes for Conor Lamb, so it's now 50% to 49.4%. Gary, do they have a sense of how long it's going to take them to tabulate those votes?
What we are being told by the election director here in Allegheny County is that they expect it to be done tabulating all the absentee votes by midnight, so that's 2 hours from now. But as you look at the people, they're working very hard. It's a very interesting procedure here, Anderson. When we came in, all these people held up their hand and took an oath to be honest. They had to swear to be honest before they started counting the votes. We also were told that we would have to take a similar oath when we came here because we're in the room with them. And right now we're the only news media in the room with them. We have vowed that we wouldn't come to the table, right up to the table, so we could hear everyone with the camera. We were standing about 20 feet away, and that was the agreement we had. But it gives us a very unique look at what could be, we don't know for sure, but what could be the decisive votes in this very important election here in the 18th District of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Gary, we'll continue to check in with you. Fascinating to see that process at work. It is just 1 minute past 10. Again, counting the votes, 95%. The votes in, Conor Lamb ahead with 1,132. Again, just a slight tick up, but very, very close. Let's just talk in general for the folks.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the districts. Obviously, I represent a lot of this area. And, you know, in the Allegheny County portion of the district that's still outstanding, I'd say about half the areas are Saccone areas, and half. So I don't see Lamb's lead growing much in Allegheny County, and almost everything out in Washington County is going to be good for Saccone. I can't see the Westmoreland part, so this race should tighten from here. I don't know how much at this point, though.
And do you have a sense on absentee ballots where that might go?
Only from what you've reported. I don't know whether every county counts them the way Allegheny County counts them. I think a lot of them count them at the precinct. So,
but do you have any sense in who's voting?
Joe and I were talking about who did a more effective job. The only reason I would think maybe Republicans did a more effective job is because the Republican Party was in a bigger way supporting it. I mean, it's usually not something the campaign does. It's usually something the party does. And the party was sort of big in for Saccone, and they weren't in for Lamb. So that might make a difference also.
You know, just for the viewers who are joining us just at the top of the hour who have not been watching all night, let's just talk kind of big picture on this, on why this race matters, Joe.
Well, it matters because Democrats have not so far this year in any of these specials or the midterms been able to attract enough Republican or just working class white voters, period. And they've been able to, we were able in many of these states to, or special elections, to move suburban Republican women over, younger Republicans, college-educated Republicans. For this to be where it's at right now, I mean, it's already a success in the sense that Conor Lamb, win or lose, has successfully been the first candidate out of the chute for Democrats.
So what? It's a symbolic boost for Democrats?
Well, no, he's won a lot of the labor votes that voted for Trump in the last. There's no way to win this or to even be in this, have this lead, even if Saccone, comes back and wins it by a few tenths of a point. There's no way that can happen without working class voters who voted for Trump either staying home or coming out and voting, but voting for Conor Lamb. That's a Democrat with a D next to his name. No matter what he was saying about anything, let me tell you, with a lot of these voters, just having the word Democrat next to your name has for the last decade been a big problem. And
this is what I
meant
when the polls closed at 8 o'clock, and I said I'm more interested in the margin than I am in the victor. This is very exciting, a more exciting night than I thought that we would have in our hands. But the narrative's already set. It hardly matters now which of these two wins for a district that is in the process of vanishing within the span of the
we should point out the person who wins is only going to serve until, what, November?
Correct.
Right.
So the narrative is already cemented now. This is a district that the president won by 20 points that at best his party has really struggled to control and to contain. Nothing's going to change that now.
But if Trump wins, if Saccone were
What's
to
a
win, a win is a win. And if I
don't think so.
Well, but if Saccone were to win, the president of the United States is not going to take a look at the margin and say, well, he only won by this much.
But Gloria, I think there are many who will wake up in the morning, as someone said earlier, and say, I'm not so sure at this margin already. I'm not sure I'm sticking around. I think there are a number of people on the fence.
Jason Miller, are you going to wake up and say that?
No, I mean, I think tomorrow the president's going to get up and he's going to go to Missouri. He's going to talk about tax cuts and what's going on with the economy. And I think more Americans tomorrow are going to be worried about their NCAA bracket. You get that filled in. They're going to care anything about this race. And this will be a snapshot where we can see where some of the energy enthusiasm is on the left. We'll see, again, what we talked about with union voting households and if there are any trends that people can pick up. But again, the overarching narrative, what people are really paying attention to, I think really is going to stem from the White House, and as the president's out selling the economic successes, that's going to influence a lot more. The rest of these races in the fall, they're not going to have the opportunity to pay attention to every single race.
Assuming he sticks to that message tomorrow, by the way, doesn't fire somebody else. But Kirsten, we haven't heard from you.
I just disagree. I mean, it may be true that the average person isn't thinking about it, but the people who are going to be running are going to be thinking about it. And the people, in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are going to be thinking about that. And they're going to be watching this, and they're going to be making a lot of decisions about what they're going to do. And so there's two things. One, the Republicans are going to be looking at the Trump coalition and is it, what's going on there? And the Democrats are going to be looking at, are we going to try to run people in the districts that are like the districts? Right. Because that's a big fight.
If you don't think...
By the way, 96% of the votes in now. Conor Lamb slight lead now, 1,238 ahead, a slight jump.
Just imagine this scenario. You're a Republican. You're on the ballot this year. You know that every guide of history tells you this is going to be a really rough year to run. You're in a competitive district. And by competitive, I mean fine. You're in one of the districts that Hillary Clinton won, so that really had you concerned already. You probably have your game on already. But if, let's say you're just in a Trump +5 district, a Trump +8 district, and you look up tonight and you see that a district that Donald Trump won by 20 points just over a year ago is potentially about to slip into Democratic hands or come really close, you start freaking out. Like, that's just the reality. And what happens is, your members, your fellow members, you start all that hand-wringing together. How bad is it going to be? Are we prepared? Do we have the money that we need? This is going to set the stage for the Republican Party to look at their majority and say, are we fortified the way we need to be if indeed this wave that is crashing on the shore in November is enormous? And tonight that's why we're paying attention tonight, is we're trying to get a sense of, we know it's going to be a Democratic year, but we're trying to get a sense how big of a Democratic year might it be, and that's why a night like tonight is why we're paying attention.
And it's also a question of how much the president can ask any Republican to do. If he wants a Republican to agree with him on something that may push them a little bit in an uncomfortable zone, if he had done that on guns, for example, or if he does it on something else, they're going to say, you know what, me first. I'm sorry, you're not helping me out here.
And bringing the president in doesn't help him.
And bringing the president in didn't help. Of course, the president on Saturday night, I have no life, so I saw what the whole thing. And the president on Saturday night didn't talk about his candidate. He talked about himself. Normally, when you go into when you go into campaign for someone, you talk about that person most of the time.
And they put a lot into this race. I mean, it wasn't only that Donald Trump was there. Mike Pence was there. Ivanka Trump was there. Donald Trump Jr. was there. Kellyanne Conway was there. I mean, they threw everyone.
But Joe Biden was there.
Joe Biden was there for the other candidate. So they threw everything in there. And you talk about Rick Saccone not being able to raise money. Well, in some ways, he didn't need to, because he had $10 million from outside groups.
Where I got to jump in and push back is Rick Saccone didn't run his first TV ad in the campaign until last Wednesday. This race was defined. This race was over. And the one ad that he put up was terrible. And I don't think it helped him down the home stretch. But what I do hope, going back to David's point, I do hope that Republican members on the Hill take a look and say, am I running a good campaign? Am I raising some money? Are these guys scared straight to figuring out that they need to worry about winning their own race and not just hope that some magical wave is going to carry them? I hope some of these folks snap to attention. They need to run good campaigns. And if they're not running good campaigns, they might get
But you have to also remember that terrible candidates win all the time. Yeah. I mean, all the time. Most candidates are terrible candidates. But they're, I mean, that's the truth. And so the idea that, like, just he was a bad candidate and that explains everything. What is much more important is where you're running and, you know, what kind of district you're in.
Let's go back to Wolf and John in the Magic Wall just to figure out exactly what votes are still outstanding.
Yeah, there's still outstanding votes, John King. Right now, 96% of the vote has been counted. Conor Lamb, the Democrat, he has a slight lead, 50% to 49.4%. He's ahead by 1,238 votes. The key question in these 4 counties in this 18th congressional district, where are those outstanding votes?
Let's go through them, and as we do, we'll notice we've been through this before in past tight elections. We're stuck at the moment, which is what makes the tension build, in the sense that 96% district-wide, 1,200 votes and some change, the lead. Let's start in the biggest county. This is Allegheny. The slice of Allegheny County that's in the district is more than 40% of the voters in the district. We've been stuck at 97% for some time. Conor Lamb has had a healthy lead, margin-wise, the percentage-wise, and math-wise, throughout the night. The question is, when that 3% comes in, he needs it. He needs more, and he needs the numbers. And the question is, you know, when those precincts come in, do they come in with a similar margin? Keep an eye on that 57%. When the math comes in, do those numbers stay right around there? Why does he need them? Because he's in the lead right now, but second largest county in the district, this slice of Westmoreland County here in the 18th district, we're up to 99% now. Rick Saccone, just shy of a little more than 10,000 votes there. A little more than 10,000 votes there. I said earlier, I think he needs to be closer to 60, but he's right there. We're at 99%. He has moved up from the mid-50s to 57. We'll see if that's enough. We'll wait for the final precincts to come in here. That's what's tightened this up, 1,238 votes. And then over here, we're still missing 10% of the vote in Washington County. When we had 33%, this race was tied. As Morris comes in, the DNA, this is a Republican county. You see Rick Saccone right there. But again, that's what, a little shy of 3,000 votes there. At the 90% mark, Rick Saccone needs the rest of these votes to come in. He needs that margin to boost up a little bit again on the assumption. Greene County, by the way, is 100% in, so I didn't go down to the smallest county. Still looking for these 3%, plus Gary Tuchman watching the absentee ballots could well come down to that count in the case of the margin. But in Allegheny County, when that final 3% comes in, Conor Lamb needs to stay there and boost that math number, because when you pull back out, 918 votes ahead, 900 inside 1,000 with 96% of the precincts in. And again, I just want to check one more time to see if anything's moved. That's still at 99%. Expect Rick Saccone to get a little bit more here, but we're at 99%, so not a lot. This is key. When that 10% comes in, if it sticks, does it stick with this, or does the Saccone margin go up a little bit? And if you are in the Lamb campaign right now, this is what matters most, because it's the biggest part of the district. More people live in these precincts because it's more suburban. You're more rural when you move out to the other places. You are calling your precinct captains in these areas, trying to find out what in Allegheny County is missing. Is it a hard place? Is it a big place for us? And you're biting your nails right now in both campaigns, because you're looking at 918 votes at 96%.
Yeah, and we're told there's about 3,700 absentee ballots they're counting in Allegheny County right now. We're watching a nail-biter in Pennsylvania with more than 95% of the vote counted. This race is still too close to call. Got a key race alert. Look at how close it is. At 96% of the vote is in. The Democrat Conor Lamb, his lead over the Republican Rick Saccone, only 918 votes. Conor Lamb has 104,697 votes. Rick Saccone has 103,779 votes. This is 49.9% for Conor Lamb, 49.5% for Rick Saccone. Only 918 votes separate these two candidates. Jake and Dana, this is, people thought it was going to be close, but this is really, really close.
Yeah, and for those wondering at home, we should point out there is no automatic recount in Pennsylvania on the congressional district level. There is on the statewide level, but in the congressional district level, if it becomes that close, a candidate will have to petition, get 3 individuals in each precinct.
That's right. And we started out this evening talking about how Republicans genuinely didn't think that they were going to win. Democrats genuinely thought that they would. And now it feels less certain. I wouldn't say different, but less certain. Jake, I feel like we've done this before. This feels like deja vu, don't you?
And And one other thing, let's take a look at the estimated absentee ballots by county that remain out there. Allegheny County, about 3,700 approximately. Greene County, 203. Washington County, 1,100. Westmoreland County, 1,800 total. Almost 7,000 absentee ballots by county. And we have Conor Lamb with 96% of the vote in, only up by 918 votes. These absentee ballots are going to have to be counted before this race is called.
And they probably will, and they're going to be absolutely key. I was just texting with the senior Democrat, Jake, on this whole question of where Conor Lamb is right now, who said that he is right now at the minimum number of votes that he needs to win. If he dips below where he is right now, he's in big trouble. And Allegheny County, where John was showing us, really needs to be no less than 57%. He's right now about 57.3%. If it goes below that, this is according to Democrats, Conor Lamb is toast. And Republicans, I will just say, are sort of certainly not thrilled because this should not be this competitive, but are feeling a little bit different and a little bit desperate that they did at 8 o'clock tonight.
One of the things that's interesting also is that the pollsters have still not yet figured out how to measure this very volatile electorate. They were not able to do so in 2016, and they're not able to do so now. The problem of voters who are low-frequency voters and no-frequency voters who show up and actually vote at the polls remains a perplexing problem for them. Conor Lamb, according to a Monmouth University poll, was supposed to win by 5 or 6. Both Democrats and Republicans had internal votes, internal polls showing that Conor Lamb, suggesting Conor Lamb was going to win. All three of those pollsters wrong, that this is an incredibly tight race.
Absolutely, and I will tell you that what Republicans, especially those from Trump land, are telling me tonight is, as you can imagine, they give the credit to the president for going there on Saturday, for rallying the Republicans who were not excited about getting out. He raised the level of Republican turnout more than it was going to be. We'll have to dissect those numbers and see if that's really true. But I think just anecdotally, where we see where these votes are right now, based on what the anticipation was from Republicans and Democrats, they might be right.
On the big scale, on the large scale picture, as our colleagues across the room have pointed out, this is a district that Republicans normally win. And for Conor Lamb to make it so close, even if ultimately he does not win, and we have no idea what's going to happen, it still shows that the Democratic electorate is fired up. And the wind is at the back of Democrats, even if Rick Saccone ends up winning. But on a smaller, so that's the big scale picture. Yes. On the smaller scale picture, you're right that Republicans are going to say that President Trump showing up and not only motivating the base, but telling them the name of the candidate, Rick Saccone, telling them, hey, by the way, there's an election on Tuesday, that information shared by President Trump, bringing the spotlight, really helped. Wolf Blitzer.
All right, let's go over to John King and see where these votes are outstanding. I want to also point out 96% of the vote is in the Libertarian candidate, Drew Miller. He's got 1,280 votes. He's got more votes than the difference right now. Conor Lamb, the Democrat, still ahead of Rick Saccone, the Republican, by only 918 votes.
And we don't have exit polling, so we can't say who they would have voted for if Drew Miller were not on the ballot. But this is welcome to American politics 2018 and for the foreseeable future, third-party candidates. Increasingly, especially in close races, you're going to see lots of them. We could go back to 2016. You could talk to Hillary Clinton about Jill Stein if you want. That's up to you. I'll leave you that conversation. But let's go back through this. 918 lead, 49.9 to 49.5. That matters in the sense that we don't know exactly where it's coming from, but it's taking away. So let's see where we are. And again, this is where we're waiting for these final precincts to come in. We're at 97% in the slice of Allegheny County. Stretches up here too, but this slice of Allegheny County is in the district. This is the bread and butter for Conor Lamb. He needs to stay above 57% there. We're told there are a few, we're up to 98% now. We're told there are a few precincts out here that Conor Lamb is expected to win. One in an area where he's expected to get in the high 50s, one in an area where the lower 50s. Dana was just talking about this. Democrats think it's critical, especially now that they're seeing the performance in the Republican areas, that he stay at or above 57%. So let's watch that and watch the math. 98% in Allegheny County. Again, only 2% left. More people live here, so that 2% sometimes has a little bit more weight in terms of the math than 2% somewhere else. We'll watch that. Let's just check. Down here in Washington County, we've been stuck at 90 for a good stretch of time now. Again, at 33%, this county was tied. As more Republican votes have come in, we're up to 90. Rick Saccone at just shy of 53%. As that final percent comes in, just like I said, Conor Lamb has to hold his 57 here. If you're Rick Saccone, you want to get above 53, closer to 55. As that final 10% comes in, you need the math. You need the math to make it up here. Let's pull back out here. 795 votes at 90.
Got a bit tighter.
At 97%. Let's come over here. We're at 99% here in Westmoreland County. So again, Rick Saccone can expect, given this margin, to get something, but it's a tiny percentage left to come in. So the main things we're looking for, what little bit comes in here, this up to 93% here. Again, this is the third, Allegheny first. Then we come here to Westmoreland, then to Washington. It's the third biggest slice of the district, but still some votes to come in here. Let's come back out. 540 votes now as more votes come in. And as they come in, again, Greene County, I'm not ignoring Greene County. I'm not going back there because it's at 100%. So we're up to 93. We're up to 99, and we're up to 98 right here. You pull it all out as we count them, and it's going to take counting. We're going to have to count every last vote tonight. 540 right there. Sometimes you get a margin so big, you can do the math and say they're not there. At 540 ahead, with 97% in, guess what? That final percentage point is going to matter here. That final 7% is a big deal here. That's a decent chunk, 7% again there, and again, 2% left here. Conor Lamb has to hope in the 2% that's out, he performs at or above that 57%.
Take a look at, let's say it shows the district right now. You can see 540 votes. That's what separates Conor Lamb, the Democrat, Rick Saccone, the Republican. 97% of the vote has been counted in this surprisingly competitive special election. Stay with us. The final ballots are being tallied.
And welcome to a very exciting race in Pennsylvania. It does not get much closer to this. 98% of the votes counted. Conor Lamb is up by 585 votes. That is it. Rick Santorum, you've been watching this very closely.
Most of the votes in Washington County are from Peters Township, which is a very affluent suburban area of Pittsburgh, just across the border from Allegheny County. So all those conservative voters who don't want to pay the higher taxes in Allegheny County cross the border into Washington County and live in Peters Township. And there's looks like 6 precincts left in Peters Township. It's a populated area. There's enough votes to make up that difference. The difference is there's 3 districts left in Allegheny County. All should be for Lamb. One probably pretty heavier for Lamb. So you
still,
call it.
You can't call it.
I'm not going to call it.
You think Peters Township would be for Saccone?
Yeah, the districts that have come in so far in Peters Township actually have voted for Saccone. And it's across the border is Upper St. Clair, which voted, mid-50s for Lamb. But again, it's the folks who want to leave Allegheny County, a more conservative voter that lives in Peters Township than in.
But regardless, it's probably going to boil down to the absentee ballots, no?
Well.
Whatever happens at this point, with 7,000 absentee ballots, we're going to be up.
Can I make a point independent of the absentee ballots, which is simply this, that an advanced society should be able to count 215,000 ballots with one question on them within 2.5 hours. It's not a sexy subject. We never enhance the machinery.
I'm not appreciating you beating up on my home.
Well, it's a point I would make about the whole country. It just seems like every 4 years we say, we need to improve this system.
There might have been lines at the polls. You never know. I mean, come on.
Oh, I remember the Iowa caucuses when you were hanging by a vote or two that night in the middle of the night.
It's going to get worse because we're going to paper ballots, and that'll be a lot slower than this.
How long does it take to count the absentees? I mean, that's a...
They were done by midnight.
Yeah.
But they don't report in drips and drabs. They just do it all in one big number.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. But getting back to the national significance of this race, which we were talking about before, I mean, you made the point early on that for you, who won and who lost, not all that significant because they're only going to be in there till November. But the how close they came, that was the story.
I think it's hard to spin. I really don't know what the argument will be on behalf of Republicans and the White House come tomorrow, because by any objective measure in a district, and it's been said so many times tonight, that the president won by 20 and Mitt Romney won by 17. The president invested personal capital by coming in on.
But it's better to
Saturday
win
night.
than to lose if you're a Republican. I mean, a win is a win.
But I think anybody who looks at the metrics of this thing says this should have been a slam dunk, and the fact that it's not will set off alarm bells, or at least it should within the GOP. And I am as interested in what takeaway Democrats come away with, because I think there's some difficult decisions as to how they position themselves, and I think that it speaks to a divide within the Democratic Party as to whether it's going to be an Elizabeth Warren.
Right. If you're
Bernie
Elizabeth Warren or
Sanders.
Bernie Sanders and you're watching this, what are you thinking?
I think you have trepidation about a young member of Congress, should he win, who holds an AR-15 and gets elected by being, someone with those bona fides.
Yeah, but you have a senator who won by being kind of, middle of the road in Alabama, and I don't think they were scared by that.
Yeah, that was pretty unique, though. He's running against someone with as much baggage as you could ever conjure.
But, Michael, let's talk about the metrics for a moment. I think one of the things that Trump supporters will point out is the fact that Saccone was down by 5 points before the president's visit, and then afterwards, this thing is dead even. I mean,
but why was he down by 5 to begin with? I mean, you could say it's because he lacked charisma.
I've been saying for the last couple
arguably,
hours.
he was down 5 because of the president.
No,
right?
the president coming in is what gave him the wind in the sails, gave him that pop. I think also his policies, talk about the steel tariffs, and that gave him a shot in the arm as well. It's because of President Trump that he even got this close. I think people are going to go back and look about how important it is to
I would argue that
your
it's
own
because of
candidacy
President
early and not wait till the last minute.
Perhaps it's because of President Trump that he started as far behind as he was. Listen, I don't want to lay the whole thing off.
Trump boosted him. That logic doesn't work.
Right, exactly.
That is the dynamic of our current political moment. It is exactly that. Donald Trump can totally motivate the Republican base, the core part of the Republican base. It's why we're going to see Donald Trump this year in places like North Dakota and West Virginia and Missouri.
David, if he's down 5 and then Trump comes in and it's a tie game, it's a jump ball, that's because Trump gave him that boost.
I just said that. He can motivate the base, but he can also turn off a whole swath
and motivate
of suburban women who the party needs in order to have a successful year. So both things can happen here.
What I think this race really is a measurement of passion. Passion wins tonight, however it turns out. It was a chilly day in Pennsylvania today. We had snowflakes on the ground. It's a vanishing district. There's one question that people have to come out and vote on. It really requires, I give credit to those who come out and do their civic duty, but this really requires an emotional attachment to who wins this thing, and that's what it really shows you tonight. Where does the passion lie?
Conor Lamb, 700 votes ahead with 98% of the votes counted. They are still counting the final ballots. 98% of the vote, as I said, has been tallied. Still too close to call. They're counting the absentee ballots as well. All of that ahead.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
An incredibly close race in Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district. 98% of the vote is in. The Democrat Conor Lamb is only 700 votes ahead of Rick Saccone, the Republican Drew Miller. He is down. He's the Libertarian. But take a look at this. More than 215,000 votes have been cast. 700 vote difference between Conor Lamb and Rick Saccone. 49.9% for Conor Lamb, the Democrat. 49.5% for Rick Saccone, the Republican. Let's go over to John King at the Magic Wall. And once again, Greene County, the smallest county there, the 100% of the vote is in. Washington County, there's still some significant number of votes outstanding there, about 7%.
7%. The question is, do they factor? We're waiting for the rest of the precincts to come in there. We said absentee ballots still to be counted there. This is Rick Saccone's great hope right now in the sense that, again, pull back out, a very narrow 700 vote margin overall, and you've still got 7% out here in a county, Washington County, part of the district that he's winning and winning comfortably. I said earlier tonight he wants that number to be higher than that. So the question is, in the remaining precincts, how many of those are Saccone votes? And when it's a 700 vote margin, he needs to win and by a healthy margin there. And I just want to check Westmoreland again. 99% here. So perhaps a few more votes for Rick Saccone, who's winning this district. This is his best county of the bigger counties here. And then lastly, we're at 99% here. And we know, we saw Gary Tuchman a couple times earlier, they're counting the absentee ballots in Allegheny
Well, let me go
County
to Gary.
that they say they'll have at midnight.
Let me go to Gary Tuchman right now. Gary, I understand, about 3,700 absentee ballots in Allegheny County. They're counting now. We expect to get the results by midnight. Is that right?
Well, if it may even be earlier, and with us right now is Mark Wolosik. He's the elections director here in Allegheny County. First of all your votes in are for people who voted today. 100% of the ballots are in,
yes,
correct?
All the districts have reported.
Okay, and the Democrat got 57.04% of the vote here in Allegheny County. So now we are all realizing that the absentee balloting could decide this election. We have at least 3,000 absentee ballots that have come in, but you're still expecting more, correct?
We're expecting about 10 more precincts to arrive within the next 10 or 15 minutes. We will scan them, and then we will We will upload the results to the different electronic medium, and then we will put them in a database.
And you were explaining to me that it would take 10 or 15 minutes to do all the computer work.
Yes.
But as of now, you don't know what the 3,000 ballots that have already arrived and gone into those scanning machines tell us.
That's right. We do not know.
It's all a secret. You're the boss, you know nothing.
Well, that's right. We don't know.
Okay.
So they are stored internally on that machine, but we haven't downloaded them to a disk to read them.
Now, you sent out 4,100 roughly absentee ballots, so that's the most we'll get back. We already have 3,000, so you're expecting no more than 1,100, but probably less than that.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be 1,100 out of those 10 districts that are reported.
So what
because
time?
Not everybody returns them.
Correct. So what time do you think we will know if these last ballots come in the next 10 minutes? How soon will we know what all 3,000 or more ballots tell us?
Hopefully by 11:15.
It's about 11:15, so we're talking about half an hour from now.
Yes.
Okay. And this is the absentee ballot. I want to give you a look. What people do when they get it, they pencil in Conor Lamb, Rick Saccone, Drew Ray Miller, the Libertarian. They send it in. It then goes, excuse me for 1 second. I apologize. I don't mean to be rude to you. You have a lot of hard work to do. They then go through those gray machines. That's where they've been scanned. You can see it's very quiet right now. They're done with the 3,000. They're waiting for the remaining ballots to come in. And these are the ballots that could decide the election. Thank you for being so gracious and talking to us. Back to you, Wolf. Back to you, Jake. Back to you, Anderson.
All right, thanks very much. So it could come down, John, to these absentee ballots in Allegheny County, Washington County. We don't know about Westmoreland and Greene County, but it could come down to counting those.
If you pull out district-wide at 700 votes with 3,000 or more just in Allegheny County, so that clearly the math is out there to change this race. The math is out there with the absentee ballots here. The commissioner saying he thought all the precincts were reporting. So we'll see if there's any change in Allegheny County in the next half hour as we wait for the absentees. But again, this was Conor Lamb's biggest test, stay above 56, 57. He did that. The question is it enough, the margin there, to offset what we're seeing here, still at 93% in Washington County. So this is until we get to the absentee ballots, this is the biggest question mark of outstanding votes. Where are they coming from? How many are there? Does it stick with this margin? So how many can Rick Saccone make up if it stays in the red? Over here in Westmoreland, we're at 99%. So I'm waiting to see what happens in Washington County, the rest of those votes, and then we'll be counting those absentees. Optimistic, he said, before midnight. That would be nice.
We'll see if that happens. It clearly underscores, once again, every vote counts. It's critically important. Look at how close it is right now. 755 vote advantage for the Democrat Conor Lamb over the Republican Rick Saccone. All right, Anderson, they're counting the votes. We'll see what happens.
Yep, and we'll be following it all along. President Trump has obviously taken a keen interest in this race. He went there and spoke over the weekend. Let's get our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, traveling with the president in California tonight. What are you hearing, if anything, from the White House?
Yeah, Anderson, President Trump is in Beverly Hills. You can hear the sirens behind me, probably for security. But Beverly Hills is about as far from the swamp as you can even think of it. But at this point, I talked to a source close to the White House just a few moments ago who said, listen, they are getting more hopeful watching this race tighten. No doubt about it. They believe that these absentee ballots that are outstanding in Pennsylvania, that those are more than likely to be Rick Saccone ballots. That is their wishful thinking at this point. We'll see if it bears out. But at the same time, Anderson, I talked to a Republican source, a top congressional source earlier this evening. There was a lot of hand-wringing on Capitol Hill inside the Republican Party watching this race. The source said to me, you can't read too much into one individual race, and they don't think there are a lot of Conor Lambs out there who is seen by Republicans as a very strong Democratic candidate. But this person was saying, listen, this is not a good sign for the November elections, even if the Republicans were to squeak this one out, Anderson. Keep in mind, this would be a tidal wave type surge in the Democratic Party's direction if this district were to go to Rick Saccone by just 1 or 2 percentage points. And at this point, it may not even be that. And in the words of this one top Republican congressional source, November could be a bloodbath. That is the concern inside the Republican Party. I know we've all been hearing this for weeks and months, that these trend lines are not in their favor. But there's a big concern that, yes, even though Rick Saccone could pull this out, yes, even though these absentee ballots might pull this race in his favor, this does not bode well for the upcoming midterms. No matter what the president decides to tweet tomorrow morning, there are people inside the Republican Party who are deeply worried about what they're seeing tonight, Anderson.
Is the president going to be making a public appearance tonight, that he might be on camera and might make some comments about this race?
I don't think so. Apparently he's doing some fundraising this evening here in Beverly Hills. About as different a scene as you can imagine compared to Western Pennsylvania. But no, I think that the most that we'll hear from the president would be tomorrow. He's supposed to hold a rally in St. Louis. We'll get a chance to hear from the president then. And he, you know, you saw those remarks that he made in Miramar down at the Marine base in Southern California earlier today. He had a pep in his step, no doubt about it. But this is something, when you talk to Republican sources close to the White House, inside of the White House, up on Capitol Hill, this is that steady drumbeat, that undercurrent that worries them more than anything, that the president could perhaps lose the House of Representatives come this fall. And yes, while the Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee have wrapped up their investigation, when the House changes hands, the chairmanships change hands, the committees change hands. And all of a sudden, there is a doomsday scenario that they worry about inside the White House, inside the Republican Party, sources that advise the president that you could all of a sudden have this Russia investigation reignited come 2019. Yeah. That is the doomsday scenario that they're worried about. And every one of these Conor Lamb races, even if they lose this one tonight, they are concerned it moves them in that direction.
All right, Jim Acosta, appreciate that from California. Tonight, nearly all the votes counted in Pennsylvania, as we've been talking about. Absentee ballots could be the deciding factor. Tally underway. Stay with us.
Real nail-biter in this special election in Pennsylvania. Take a look at it right now. 98% of the vote has been counted. Conor Lamb, the Democrat, he is ahead. He is ahead by 755 votes over Rick Saccone, the Republican, 49.9% to 49.5%. More than 250,000 votes have been cast. Only 755 votes separate these two candidates. Not many. John King over here at the Magic Wall. I want to get to Washington County right now. Take a look at Washington County. 93% of the vote we have counted so far. 93% of the vote. Rick Saccone ahead of Conor Lamb in Washington County. But I want to bring in Larry Spar. He's the director of elections in Washington County. And I know, Larry, you and I have spoken. You have some new numbers that you've just tallied. Update our viewers. What does Rick Saccone have, and what does Conor Lamb have?
Okay, Mr. Lamb has 22,114. Mr. Saccone has 25,615.
Let me repeat those numbers. Lamb, you said 22,100. What did you say?
114.
114. Rick Saccone, 25,615.
Correct, sir.
That's the entire, that's 100% of the vote with the exception of the absentee ballots. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right, now absentee ballots, how many absentee ballots are there?
Okay, we had a total of 1,195 absentees returned.
And those will be counted only tomorrow, is that right?
Well, we started to prepare them tonight for beginning to count the ballots tomorrow.
Why do you wait to count the absentee ballots tomorrow? You see how close this contest is. Those 1,195 absentee ballots, that clearly could make the difference in this entire election.
That's correct.
So tell our viewers why you're waiting to finally tally those absentee ballots until tomorrow.
Well, it's state law that we have to place the absentees in secure envelopes, seal them, send them back out to the precincts where the ballots had come from. Then the election boards at the precincts will take those ballots unopened, return them back to the county. Then we have to open those ballots at the county elections office, remove the ballots from the envelopes to prepare them for scanning tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. Are there different rules for Washington County than Allegheny County? Because we were told by the director of the Board of Elections in Allegheny County, they should have all the results of the absentee ballots during the 11 p.m. Eastern hour.
I would say so, but they have a much huger staff than what we do. They have the people to handle that number of ballots. We don't.
All right, well, stand by for a moment, Larry, because I want John King to explain these new numbers. 100% of the vote in Washington County has now been tallied, and you see Rick Saccone is ahead.
Right. So here's what I want to do for you. Here's what we have officially right now, because the new math he just gave you is not in our system yet, not in the system yet. Before you started that conversation, we had Rick Saccone with a 2,841 vote lead in Washington County. With the new numbers, he has a 3,501 vote lead in Washington County, which means he has a net gain of 660 votes. We currently have Conor Lamb ahead by 755 votes, which means Add these numbers into the system, absent changes in anywhere else during that conversation, the lead goes down to 95 votes. So when the votes come in from Washington County, you will have Conor Lamb ahead, assuming we got no new votes in Allegheny or Westmoreland, why we've been having this conversation. Conor Lamb's lead, by that math, once you get the full total in Washington County, a bigger margin, 660 net gain for Rick Saccone, makes it a 95-vote race. As we wait for the absentee ballots here, just gentleman just said we're going to do this tomorrow, and obviously here in Westmoreland, I can move this around, bring out the county. I got to turn this off to bring it out. Bring out Westmoreland here. We're at 99% here as well. Leaving my scribbles up in case I need to go back and do the math. We're at 100% in Allegheny, so we don't expect any more live votes. We're just waiting now for the absentee ballots that the gentleman said we should have by 11:15, 11:30. And again, that was the big. We were waiting for this all night long. Washington County. Now we have the numbers up here. We're up to 100% right now. And again, that's what tightens the race.
And you see in Washington County right now, Rick Saccone, 25,615 votes to Conor Lamb, 22,114, 53% to 46%. But those 1,195 absentee ballots in Washington County could make a huge difference. And what we heard earlier, John, about 3,500 absentee ballots in Allegheny County.
Allegheny County. And again, Gary Tuchman with the gentleman, the commissioner who's doing the counting, he said he expected the last 10 precincts, I think, to come in momentarily. And so as we get into the hour, we'll get these here. The question will be, since if they're not going to count these ones until tomorrow, the question is, what is the margin after we get these? Is the margin outside the grasp of these making a difference? We're going to be doing math for a while.
Right now, with the latest numbers we just got, it's a 95-vote difference. The Democrat ahead by only 95 votes. Essentially, this is a tie. We're waiting for the absentee ballots. We're not going anywhere.